Right. Okay, that's really weird. Now we should be live. Are we on YouTube now? Is that working? I don't know.
I'll have a look.
It was a big go live button and I hit it. That's really strange. Yep, it's all working now. That's really weird. Don't know why that stuffed up. Hello YouTube. Hope everyone's doing well. We were talking. We were streaming to Twitch.
Sorry about that. That better.
They're both doing it. No, it's all right. But there was some kind of weird issue with YouTube. It just didn't go live for some reason. But hopefully that's all fixed. So I hope everyone's well. Yeah, cool. Twitch working, YouTube working. We're all good now. So that was a weird delayed start. But anyway, yeah. So we're going to talk about IAE this week. We're also going to talk about hopefully ISC comes out, and we're going to watch that. These guys had to inform me of that because I actually thought it wasn't coming to next week. So it shows you how bad I've been.
I never know when it's coming out. I just go looking for it. Is it on? Is it on? No, piffle. So
yeah.
All
right. Good to see everyone here. Sorry, we actually lost a few people because people thought we weren't starting, but apologies for that. But yeah. But we're here. We just had some weird issue. It was doing a duplicate CD, not a CD key, stream key bug, which is what I was trying to fix. Bot's up and running though as well, so you can shoot your questions in now.
Good to see you, Walker Bait and Empirical Farming. Empirical Farming, are you going to be a quasi farmer as well? Yeah. Inquiring minds like Old Man Hurston want to know. W. Allen and Damar Begonja. Great to see you guys as well. Although Begonja, being a great man, you've gone. You were up here. Now you're down here.
Yeah. So if you have a question or statement, just include question in your question or statement in any form, and our bot will pick it up, and we'll go through that as well. So I think I'll kick it off this week. Oh, sorry.
Well, before you do that, for those of you who are new to the channel on YouTube, consider hitting that little subscribe button. It does help us a lot. And for those of you who are here every week, don't forget, hit that little thumbs up button because it makes us feel warm and fuzzy on the inside. Back to you, X.
All right, so I think what I'll do is I'll roll it over to the browser as we go. And I wanted to go really quickly through the roadmap roundup that we had this week. There's not many big changes. I think the biggest one was that they've rolled the Corsair into 317. But other than that, there really isn't that much. It's all stuff that we've heard before. Great STV, Rivers and Stantons, Sand Caves, Secure Grace Korea, and New Mission Horizon. But that's basically it. It's just like here, we're in a holding pattern for 318. That's basically what I took from it. I don't know if you guys took the same things, so I don't know.
Well, I suppose the biggest thing is it's saying those things haven't been removed. They're still there.
Yeah.
So the Corsair going into 317 is good. That means that it is ready to go. They were just, and that probably indicates 318's being delayed a little bit more than they wanted, which we already knew. And the things that are still there are still there. So nothing's lost. It's just we're delayed. I'm sorry, guys.
Yeah. But other than that, yeah, I've really only got questions this week, and obviously I see when it pops up. So yeah, get your questions in, and we'll start on those pretty much straight away. The only questions I've got coming in at the moment are from the Nightbot on Twitch. So yeah, if you guys have got questions, please get them in, and we'll get started on them as soon as they pop in. But yeah, other than that, what are you? I guess I'll start with you guys then. What are you guys looking forward to from IAE? So, Algared, we can start with you if you want.
Yeah, admittedly, one of the things I always like about IAE and even Invictus is actually any lore stuff. So any new lore stuff is stuff I like. I always like, and I also do like the ship reveals. So I do like when we get a new ship. I would like to think we're getting that Aegis or Anvil. I always get the two companies mixed up. Capital ship that's supposed to be there. The one we've heard in the voice boxes being built at Killian shipyards for year upon year upon year upon year. So yeah, that's one of the things I would like to really like to see. And Walker Bait, thank you for that $10 super chat there. If you've got a question, and you chuck it in with a super chat, we will always answer it pretty much straight away. So, but thank you for that. If you have a question, we'll try and get that one pretty much first off, or one of the first off.
Yep. Well, we can go into that now. What did Walkabout say? He didn't say anything. He just gave us $10.
Nothing. He just said, "That's what I said."
I think that's because we're planning to do a Fix My Fleet with Walkabout, so I think that's just a preemptive thank you for that. So thank you very much for that, Walkabout.
In terms of IAE, just while I talk about IAEX, I don't think the YouTube questions are being recorded by Question Box. There's a couple of questions in the chat, and they are not being picked up by Streambot at the moment.
Okay, restarting the bot. Restarting the bot.
But I would absolutely love to see the capital ship, just as Algared had said. I just think at the moment it feels like there's a bit of a weight on them, as in they're not doing them for the moment, and I think that's why they work out all the back-end stuff of how these ships are actually going to work. They don't want to promise much more in that vein until they've kind of got a few more details.
There we go.
It would be... Oh, perfect.
Yeah, we just got like a whole bunch of questions come in. Thank you for letting me know that. So yeah.
Negativity. Yep. Thanks for that. $4.99 or whatever it ends up being donation. And yes.
Yeah, I think
I could see that point as well.
Yeah, I think the thing though, negativity is we've been waiting for it for so long. It's kind of like I'm doubtful, right? I'm just doubtful. I'm like, this is like the 4th or 5th year people have brought up the Naval Capital, and I'm at that point now. I'm like, I'll believe it when I see it. So I don't know if you're the same, Algared and Badges, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah, and I do feel the same way. It's one of those things that the stuff that we hear in game about Naval building this new ship on, Killian and the stuff we've heard, it says we're getting a new capital ship.
And they did
just
it
because it's a Killian yards. It says we're getting it.
And they did those audio recordings at Invictus 2 years in a row. So it's kind of like, it's like,
So I have two concerns about it. One, it's going to be so big that it's not a player ownable ship. Or two, it's going to be more expensive than a Javelin. And that scares the crap out of me. So...
Oh, thank you for the subscription with the Prime, Mint Cake. Thank you very much. I missed that. Sorry. I need to pay attention to that. But yeah, that's something we're all going to have a keep an eye on, boys.
Yep. Oh.
It's another thing that we've got to look at. There's too many things to look at. It's everywhere, but yeah.
Yeah. I have got Twitch even open on the iPad, so I could actually pay attention, but it's too far in the peripheral vision. So when I go, I'm looking at
So there's a screen that I've got set up that we can all see, and it literally has Twitch up to YouTube, Twitch chat on one side, YouTube on one side, the audio levels on one side, all the different screens going on, all on one screen, so we can all kind of follow it. But it is just a little bit too much to follow.
And I've got to admit, the font is rather small, so
that's because you're
so
old.
I tend to have YouTube. Yeah.
We'll buy you a magnifying glass, Algared, so you can go like this.
No,
rude.
You shouldn't be picking on Algared. He's a young chappy.
That's only because old man Hurston should be dead. Anyway.
Yes, old man. Yeah. Old man Hurston should be dead. He does have Nursey. Nursey does. I have no idea what Nursey is, but Nursey does make sure he gets his meds, or make sure he's got the.
That just doesn't know what's going on. He's like, so he doesn't, there's this whole lore thing with Old Man Hurston, right? And him and Paul have built up this whole character thing, and it's gone to crazy levels. So, yeah.
Tools he needs to make the meds. I don't know what he does. It has gone down a rabbit hole. It is worse than, Alice in Wonderland. It's, Alan Hurstonville. It's scary.
He's got Catgirl Workers Union and all this type of stuff. And, it goes to crazy town. You thought Avenge Me, Brother was bad. You got no idea. Anyway. All right. Should we kick off with the first question that I've got here is from Axis asks question, what capital ship is likely to be announced and why? Well, I think we did go over that with just a little bit. But I'm going to be honest with you. It's the one real thing we don't have any info on. If you look at the other ships, we've kind of got enough to go, these are the other ships. And I also think we are from my point of view, I think we are still missing the kind of medium-large one. Because the biggest ship we have right now is the MCV, I think it's called, MCV from Argo, is the biggest one we've got. So we can probably go over that a little bit if you guys want to go over that.
And the stuff I've heard of that is it's a starter profession ship, which kind of says smaller end, eh? It's not necessarily going to the larger end. It's more
Yeah.
So I don't know where it fits.
So this is what I found. So I'm just going to flick back over to the browser. I'm going to have to scroll in. So this is just a clip that I took off of a YouTube video, right? And it's just text. And this looks like, I don't know if you guys think it is, but I think this is like taken off one of the panels on the showroom floor. That's what it feels like to me when I read that. But yeah, in one part there you can see it says a startup for a business, which tells me it's a starter ship. And then the other part says it's a mobile factory, which is what the Pioneer turned into.
Mobile factory.
Yeah, it's not a mobile construction, it's a mobile factory now. So that literally tells me it's the starting profession of base building, essentially, or factories.
Yep.
So,
and the other thing that got me with that is if you wanted to do manufacturing now. In the past, I thought CIG it really hammered in that we weren't going to have manufacturing and be doing end goal stuff. But they did hint that we'd be able to do the things that went in the middle, like produce the screws or produce the bolts. So where are they going with that? And when I was talking the tinkering aspect, it made me think of a ship, a different ship that does the fine tuning of components and modifying components, which would be the only other ship I know that we've really got that does that is the Endeavour with the Super Collider.
I'm having a bit of chuckle to myself because on Twitch, Captain Kurasik has asked, do you think they would choose to rework the Perseus, but he spelled it with a P-U? So all I can picture is this giant purse with guns. But yeah, anyway, sorry, I had to bring that up because my brain went funny places. But Badgers, what's your thoughts on the MCV?
Yeah, so this is literally the first time seeing of this. And it's interesting because we've had that from CRG. They've said no crafting, so it's something else. And I wonder kind of what niche they're going to go into with this, because the not crafting thing makes science a trickier profession to pin down. Because you'd think, well, maybe it's blueprints or ways to improve your crafting, but without crafting, it's clearly not that. I wonder whether, they mentioned at CitizenCon the idea that we were going to have to refill like coolant and different fluids for life support and engines and stuff. I wonder whether it's stuff like that as well. Because manufacturing really, to me, it could be base building, but it almost hints at it being a little bit more. So I wonder whether, rather than tying players to stations and planets for yet another thing, whether you could effectively go out into the verse and kind of craft those sorts of stuff so you don't always have to go back to stations. That would be kind of cool, I think.
I've heard a lot of things floated. So the ones that I've heard floated is, the first thing I thought of is, like, if it is a base building type thing, maybe it's for smaller things like, the turrets that you and I talked about with the Spartan and the ballista back. You know the ones I'm talking about on the back of the trailer and stuff. So you could go, drop a small little farm hab down or something like that. It was for more smaller things. And then someone said to me, what if it's for clothing and stuff like that? So it's like basically a ship that has a 3D printer in it. And it's more in for smaller items like clothing and stuff like that. And it could be either, quite honestly.
I could say, just what you're saying. Just on what you were saying, X, I could see it being, because it's a mobile factory, tie that in with say, the refinery type ship. So you're refining and then making those coolants and oxygen and water supplies to actually go back into the ship, which is actually what you were saying, Badger, sorry. But yeah, I could see it being that type of thing. But it'd be interesting to see what road CIG take with that, because they've always said we're not making the missiles, we're not building the ships. We're building the component. We can contribute to components, but we're not actually able to do the end goal. So it'll be interesting.
All right. So the next one we've got is the Drake cutter. Now, I know when you and me and Paul talked about it, you guys are so adamant against Drake appearing on an Aegis ship that I actually think it's the other way, where I think it's the only ship they can put a Drake ship on, because all the other ones are military-based ships, because Aegis is a military manufacturer. This is the only ship they've got that is built for more of a civilian market. So they took the opportunity to put a Drake ship on an Aegis ship because it was the only one they were ever going to able to do it on. And so I think that Drake cutter, as it states in the Reclaimer's concept, it's called the cutter. I just think the names are exactly the same. It makes so much sense. And I understand where you and Paul are coming from. And I don't know, Paul, what, are you somewhere in the middle? Like you'll wait and see, Algared?
I'm more in the middle.
Okay. Because I'm utterly convinced it's the cutter, right? I'm just utterly convinced. Because it just makes so much sense.
I'm in the middle because I can see the arguments for it not being the cutter for the Aegis ship because of the relationship that they have. But like you, CIG have always said the Reclaimer has a cutter. They've never said it's an Aegis cutter. They've just said it's a cutter. It's a support ship. The idea we've had of that power lifter type Titan suit type thing, being able to get into ships, if you look at the, and we've always thought it'd be great if it was a Ripley's power lifter type suit.
Yeah.
That has a Drake aesthetic to it. It doesn't have an Aegis aesthetic. It has a Drake aesthetic. So I could really see it being that.
I do kind of agree, actually, if you think about the Vulture specifically.
So I'm sitting in the middle. It can go either way. And do I really care? No. And the term cutter was, as I'm sure Badgers would say, it wasn't just a cutting tool. It was actually a type of little support ship that you'd have on ships of a line back in the old Aegis sail day. So it could go either, and I'll be happy either way. So I don't care.
Thank you for the Prime sub Nightly Fish. I appreciate that. So Badgers, I haven't heard your thoughts on it at all, but I do kind of agree with Algared what he just said there. If you actually have to think of the power loader from Aliens, that is closest to Drake, surely, yeah? I don't know, you tell me.
Yeah, absolutely. And, and I noticed a couple of people in chat are saying, it's a mule that it's for salvage, that's from 1982. And yeah, most likely. But, we don't just go for the obvious. We try to think around the problem and what are the things. And I think Algared's bang on. I think if the power loader comes from anyone, Drake would be top of the list. And then Argo and Greycat would be fighting it out for second and third because it just fits those sorts of manufacturers. But Drake's definitely at the top. Yeah, I think Algared's covered kind of the spectrum of what it is. Yes, it is likely to be, something that the Reclaimer's using as part of its loadout.
Someone might go grab it for me, but there was a video that me and Algared did just on that ship because we were so interested in it. We did an entire show on it, but it was, Algared, it must have been 3 years ago. I totally forgot what it was. But when we talked about it, we went through all the things it would have to do, and literally it has to go inside. It either has to go up to the entrance of a ship where you can bring the components out and put into it, or it actually has to go into the ships to get the items out. And to me, what's the most beneficial thing? You work it through. If you actually have something that helps you get the components out, that is way more beneficial than just something that's a trolley to move it from A to B between the two ships, because then that could be any ship could do that. Any. So to make it unique, it's got to go inside to me. But yeah.
Yeah. And that is one of the things that CIG have indicated with a Reclaimer or salvage. You can't just go up to a ship and just munch it and salvage it. You've got to take the ammo off, the missiles off, the components out, the fuel out. Because if you don't do that, A, you can damage your ship, or B, you can get a big bada boom. And you don't want big bada boom in your Reclaimer.
All right, so I think the last one, or there's one more that I'm forgetting, but the medical Pisces, right? And I'll float this idea as I floated it on Paul's show as well, I've also considered what if it goes one step further and it's a medical Pisces, a medical Carrack, where they are, that's their way of introducing the medical module. So almost like the Endeavour Hope or the other Endeavour variants, they actually sell it as a medical variant of the Carrack that actually comes with the module. And that way, if you want it, you have to buy it, and then you won't actually get the module to in-game if you want it for a normal Carrack. I don't know. That's just something I thought of. It might be a new way of trying to sell the modules. I could be completely off the mark. I could be completely wrong. It was just a thought process of trying to understand how CIG could do things to make more money.
Yep.
So give me your thoughts on the Pisces badges, and do you think it could be a medical carrack as well, or am I completely off base?
Yeah, my first thought when they said it was going to be the Pisces was it ain't big enough. If you look at the size of the medical beds, you barely got enough room to put a couple of delivery crates down in a line before you run out of space again. It definitely needs it. We need these smaller kind of transfer vehicles, and I think we've been banging on forever about having a ground one as well in something like the Rover. Seems because it's environmentally sealed, so it makes sense in the Rover. But yeah, I mean, I'm all for vessels now that take us away from combat. We've got so many fighters and everything else that we're not poor in that department. Apart from the capital ships, I suppose people could argue. For medium, for light fighters and medium fighters and heavy fighters, we're doing pretty well.
Yeah.
And everything else. So yeah, I'm all for it. As for the medical carrack, I don't know what do you guys think the benefit is of having more than one med bed?
Well, I kind of go like I see that ship as like the NC 1701, or aka the Enterprise. And for me, you look at all the missions they do in that show, and one of the real big ones is humanitarian stuff. That always the start of a show, it's we're doing humanitarian aid, and then we got attacked by X. And so if you could actually have a fully medicalized carrack where it had 4 medical modules on it, and it adds heaps of extra beds, or you can drop them off like mini little bases around a planet. You mix that with a bit of science modules as well, so you've kind of got like researching a virus or something like that. They're the head of the the tip of the spear before the Endeavours rock up in orbit. So you get what I mean. They assist with all that. And the ironically funny thing is, it's in a really good spot because it's literally between the Apollo and the Endeavour. It actually would fit. And also, we don't have a lot of science ships either. So I am fully expecting a science module for the carrack and a medical one, but that's just me. Algared, you're Wayne?
Yep. For me, the ship that was always the NCC 1701 or Enterprise was actually the Idris. For me, because it had for bulk NPCs, so you had your red shirts who would go down with you and die if you needed them to.
I'm going to stop you. Because I want to know about the medical carrack. I don't want to know about the Idris.
Yeah, but as I was going to say, in terms of the carrack really does fill those roles of the Enterprise. It fills it in spades. It does the science. It does have the ability to do medical. When you look at the carrack medical bay, you've got the 2 recovery beds and the main bed. So upping those recovery beds to say tier 3 and keeping that, or tier 2 and having the other one as tier 1 is a change that could be made, but doesn't seem to be too big in terms of artwork. And then those module pods at the bottom, you can change those into recovery beds or extra crew quarters or other things. So, which ties in with some of the things they've said those pods would be, as crew quarters or science labs or medical bays or or leaving the cargo pods. So they have hinted in the past that those things could be there. So a medical carrack does have an appeal, yeah. And then a medical Pisces that fits in that. Badges.
So ask the question a different way. What would the medical carrack lose so that the medical carrack doesn't just completely invalidate the normal carrack? Because if it can do everything the other one can and medbeds, why would you ever plump for the standard carrack?
Because what's going to happen is they're going to have multiple modules for that carrack, right? So what it is about going back and changing the modules out. It's the same thing as the Endeavour. You just take the Endeavour and shrink it a little bit. So you can have a medical module, a science module. It's like the Caterpillar as well. It's customizing it to what you're going out to do. And the thing is, if you go out, it gets even worse with the carrack, because the carrack's like a really long-range explorer, right? So if you go out and you've got the wrong modules on there, and you've got 4 medical and you need a science, do you buy a whole new module at that station because they're selling one, or do you have to travel back 10 systems to get one back? It becomes.
Gotcha. So we're not talking about replacing the recovery beds with
no.
Talking
it's
about
just those,
replacing one of the cargo pods.
Yeah, there's 4 underneath.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So
I'm saying it could go either.
It's player choice. No. Well, if you're saying it's either, that's fine. But my point is just the modules. I think there's the default chip, and it's just the modules that are changing.
Yeah.
I know you could do the modules, but they could change that med bay section that we've got and increase the size of that because the bed's there.
Algared, 1 second. So thank you for the raid, Captain Skyrider. I appreciate it very much, and thank you for the subscription sync for that. Sorry, Algared. Back to you.
Awesome, lovely having a raid. That's lots of people. Fantastic. Yeah. So I could see a change to the carrack in that regard, upping that med bay section to be more of a hospital rather than just a clinic, or giving it more of that aspect. And then if they do that, you would need to have your recovery bed. You'd have to have more beds or recovery things over in an extra clinic that goes in those pods. And they did talk about those pods early on as being that type of thing. So they could do that. I could see them even down the track adding a medical rover, so I could see that going in there as well, so going full on. What does it lose? If I had to take anything off a carrack but it would gone full medical, it'd lose its jump point mapping capabilities because its computers are being used for other things, or you take the jump point mapping sensors off because it's being used for other things.
Yep.
So because they are some of the key things that the carrack's got that set it apart, and that would be things you could possibly do without impacting too much on the artwork. But if I was looking at stuff that was going to majorly impact the artwork, I'd even say, well, because it's a hospital ship and it's not going out as far and it's not being needed to be out there as much, then I'd take the drones off. So I'd reduce the drones or turn them into medical drones. So
my whole thing is the reason why I kind of bring the modules up more than converting the carrack, because it literally is more work for them to redo the whole inside, and by the time they do that, they might as well do a whole new ship. But if you're just doing a new module,
and whereas you do modules, it's just I do a new module and it clicks in. Yep, and I can see that as well.
Yeah. So from my standpoint, it's less work for more gain. Where if you, as soon as you start modifying the inside of the ship, it's a variant, and as soon as you do a variant, you might as well do a whole new ship. In my book, anyway, because they're going to make more money off a new ship if they do it that way. But we'll have to wait and see in that regard. But we do know there are modules coming for that carrack. It's just which ones they are. And again, when I look at it like a Star Trek ship, science and medical are way up there. I'd also think repair one might have to be way up there just because of the distance they're going out. So if you look what the ship's already got on it, right, cartography, repair, medical, and cargo, I would have to assume that they are extensions of that. And when I say cargo, I'm also talking about the vehicle space. So take what it has, and the modules just expand what it's already got. So
Yep, and we've known the modules are there. We've talked about, I can remember them talking about medical modules for it, crew modules for it. So you can add extra cabins for your crew. You've got science modules. So they did talk about those types of things. And I can remember back in the day, people were arguing, no, it doesn't have a med bay. To get the med bay, you've actually got to put one of your modules in. And thank you, Ace Hambone, for that $10 thing. And yes, Execute does have a point. And it's not. I'm not saying I'm agreeing with that point, but I could also see them going full Monty on the. Maybe not full Monty.
Don't think we're fighting here, guys. This is just how we talk. We talk.
This is just us discussing the idea, and
it's a back and forth.
And like you said, if you're going to change the ship, we know that putting out a new ship will get more sales when they don't, and they tend to not like bringing out the modules because then they see that microtransaction doesn't make as much. So. But we know the modules are coming. We just don't know which ones. And if they redesign the ship, then you could actually get a totally brand new sales pitch going. So,
they keep finding interesting bots to chuck in our chat, and I just easy because I've just found a way to stop them now. So once they get a new one, I just add it to the filters, and then it's gone. So and keep trying. but they're failing. I'm gonna have to talk to Grim too. I was watching Grim's stream earlier. Star Jump. Anyone that was here, and he was having the same issue because he hasn't figured out how to block them. But I'll have to let him know. There's a really easy way once you know how.
Because bots can be a pain.
Yeah. Nightbot is obviously only aggressive against the people we actually want here because bizarrely inactive when that happened. Nightbot was just like meh.
The other one that I've heard about, right? So this is the most unofficial of the ones I've heard about, right? I heard this from another content creator that said he heard it from someone at CIG, that there is apparently, you remember in Alien Week how there was no ship, right? And we're all like expecting a ship for Alien Week. Apparently there's one of the hover bikes from the vote image is an alien hover bike, and apparently that's coming at AIE. But I'll believe it when I see it, because again, to me, it's a rumor, but I just want to throw that out there. Yeah. But it's just another hover bike, so I'm at this point, take your pick. You know, like they all pretty much do the same thing. There's very little other than the quad and the dragonfly. Most of the others are just attack craft or racing. You know, they're all like 6 degrees of separation. There's not enough diversity. And for me, the very first one, the dragonfly, is still the best. Because it does cargo, it can carry another person, and it's got guns, and it's kind of more like a full drive vehicle. Like they've actually said it's better on rough terrain, and most of the places you're going to want to take those vehicles when you're exploring is going to be on rough terrain, where the Nox is the complete opposite, and it's a street racer. So, you know, and vehicles are cheap, but yeah.
Oh, look, I think you're right. In terms of the bikes, the Dragonfly is by far the best bike we've got so far, and the only reason I say that is because when it was designed specifically to also be able to be used as a snub. So you could have it on a ship and take it out and use it like a P-52 fighter. They haven't said that about the X1 or the Rangers or any other type of bike vehicle we've got. That's the only bike we've got that's been had that, and it can be used in space as a snub ship.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, that was something that Paul did bring up that was rather interesting that I'd like to float past you, Badge, is actually talking about the cutter. He was actually saying how interesting it would be if the cutter could park in the back of the Corsair. And what is that? Does that... Because you know how there's always an interaction between Drake ships, and we know it's going to be defaultly available on the Reclaimer if it is what it is. But when I actually start to think about that, can you imagine the chop shop and the because the chop shop module was apparently for the Caterpillar. Imagine if that also had room on the Caterpillar or the Corsair, so you could, because the cutter's obviously going to be small, right? It has to be a snub, and if it has to go inside, so yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
You tell me.
That's an interesting one. It certainly brings another dimension because you look at the ships that the Corsair's up against in its kind of class, and you look at the snub that goes along with that for the Connie, for example. That snub is, I don't want to say one-dimensional, but it's not far off it. Thank you very much, Deepa, for the super chat there. How's it going? It's good, mate. Thank you. We're not long started. We're still waiting for ISC to be released. It doesn't look like it's there yet. He says refreshing. No, it's not.
We also got a bit sidetracked. We were doing questions, and then we jumped off the questions and started talking about some other stuff we wanted to talk about for AIE. Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, we'll go back to your question shortly. So yeah,
but I think having the cutter and the Corsair adds up more dimensions because you know the Archimedes, the Merlin, whatever's in the back of the Connie is it's either a very light fighter support, or it's a shuttle, or it's a little bit of a scout. Whereas giving the Corsair something a little bit more, what's the word I want to use? Something with a little bit more utility to it. That would be interesting. You know, and it certainly changes the value of the Corsair for me.
And if it, go on, X.
I was gonna say because the other thing I was thinking, like after Paul brought that up, and this was after the stream, I was like, well, what if they can do that with say something like the Merlin, right? So what if all of a sudden those Merlins become like Swiss Army knives, where you can have different Merlins that dock and they do different things, and I was just like. I was like, why haven't they done that? Because Algared's talked about Kruger several times not having enough shit. But all of a sudden, if you take the Merlin and you Swiss Army knife it, it just changes the Connie completely for me. But I just float that idea, you guys. You guys tell me, how would you feel if they brought out a salvage Merlin or a repair-esque Merlin?
I don't think you need to. Like if you've got the cutter that can go inside the Corsair, the Corsair doesn't have a hanger link, so it's going in the cargo bay. So if you can put it in a cargo bay of a Corsair, you can put it in a cargo bay of a Connie. You can put it in a cargo bay of an MSR. You can put it in a cargo bay, and if it's a power loader, you can put it in a cargo bay probably of a Freelancer, or even put it on the back of a Nomad. So I don't see a problem with that. And so if it is a power loader type thing, yeah, you pair it up with a Corsair, makes perfect sense. It'd be something, it'd be a play. You buy it, you put it in. But if it's a power loader, it's going to go anywhere. If it's a small, versa-sized snub type ship, again, same thing. It can go in a Connie, it can go in a Corsair, it can go, if it can go in a Corsair, it can go in any of them. So just really quickly, so I'm reading what Grim said in chat. So Starjump is Grim, by the way, for people that don't know. And he said, could the cutter be a multi-crew salvage ship in between the Reclaimer and Vulture? Now, that is something that we actually suggested, is that's a ship that they could bring out. But the name specifically, and this is why I rule it out, Grim, is this is the original concept sale page for the Aegis Reclaimer, right? And you'll notice if I scroll down here, they very much, and I've highlighted it for you, is the cutter is the name of the snub in the ship, right? So it is very clearly already named way in advance, and it says that which may be deployed as an EVA recovery operations. We intend the game's salvage mechanic to include search and recovery functions in which players will exit their spacecraft in suits and maneuvering units to explore wreckages. Maneuvering units. That sounds a lot like a Titan suit to me, but or a small ship. And then they go on and say pocket spacecraft like the cutter, i.e. to think Titan suits.
Yeah, we'll carry tools and supplies and transport recovery artifacts back aboard the ship. So I think artifacts also includes components and stuff like that. Yep. But I will drop this in chat just on YouTube, and I will also drop it in Twitch, just so you guys can see that I'm not making this stuff up. And that's why I'm so utterly convinced that the cutter is the snub for the Reclaimer, because that's what they called it all those years ago.
And it could be something else, but like Execute says, and that was my thinking as well. Paul put forward a valid argument.
Yeah,
and it could be, and we just got to wait and see.
There's people on Twitch saying the same thing other people have said, but it wouldn't be a Drake ship because Aegis wouldn't use a Drake ship. But here's the thing, as I've said a few times, it's not Aegis that hates Drake, it's the UEE that hates Drake, and most of Aegis' ships are military ships, and that's why they wouldn't have Drake stuff on, because the UEE hates them. But guess what? The Reclaimer is a civilian ship. It's the only industry, well, besides the Vulcan, that Aegis makes. So if you were ever going to have the opportunity for an Aegis ship and a Drake ship to do stuff together, this is it, or the Vulcan, right? And the Vulcan's probably too small. So this is the one chance they have. And I think the other thing, if you add what Algared said, is if you actually think of the power loader from Aliens, the closest manufacturer to that in the game would have to be Drake. Think of the Vulture, the colors, and I think that's a really good point, Algared. It really does visualize in my head. If I think power loader, I think Drake.
And you look at the Reclaimer, and the Reclaimer really is picking up those Nostromo vibes. That was the whole thing they were going for. That they're dripping from the ceiling. It's giving that sense of you're in the ship, and there's there could be aliens hiding on this ship, and so going for that power loadery type thing from Aliens just does feel. The only other company I could think of that would do a utility power loader type ship would actually in that vein would be Argo, and if you were doing one for mining, then it would be Grey Cat. And so like Badger said, they're the only other two companies that really, for me, would
I'd have to
fit
agree.
that lore aspect.
100%. Don't disagree with that at all. All right. Let's get back to the questions. So we'll get on to some questions, since we've kind of been avoiding that. Badgers, can you let me know, or anyone let me know when IRC actually drops, and we'll try to.
And we'll amble over and have a gander.
Yeah. All right. So we did Axis's question. Where's that? I was going to find it again. There. So the next question is from Stop and Sniff, who asks, "What do you think about the odds are of a 3.18 open PTU or Wave 1 released by IAE? Also, any chance the Vulture's price will increase before IAE finishes asking for CU's chains?" Yeah, so it's actually still available in the store. Apparently, people were looking at that today, and we had a bit of a discussion on the Discord. Do you get the Cutlass Red to Vulture, or do you get the Freelancer to Cutlass Red? And my response, and you guys correct me if you think I'm wrong, but for me it's the Freelancer Dur, because the Freelancer Dur is available all the time. I don't know. They both cost $5, so you do you. I've heard people pick up both, but for me, I just got the Freelancer. I always go to the older ship because generally it's easier to get. But I don't know.
I did see people in our chat responded that the red is always available as well. Yeah. I hadn't checked that, but if both are always available, if you've got a red in your hangar,
exactly,
then you go the red to the Vulture if you want one. If you've got a Freelancer in your hangar, you go Freelancer to the Vulture. If you're wanting to save on, and just do simple CI, just simple change.
Joran's in chat, by the way. Hello, Joran. And no, I'm buying 2 Idrises. I'm no peasant. Yeah.
Says the man that we had. Says the man that we had to fundraise a Perseus for.
Oh, here we go. I wondered. It was literally one stream before that got used against me.
I'm gonna have to do an icon now for a Perseus. I can't unsee the giant purse with guns. Like it's so good. I love it.
It's the UEE and getting in touch with their feminine side.
Yeah, and we'll get, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a prop made that's a giant oversized handbag and just get it sent to Badger's house and make him walk around with it on to work and stuff. Hey, I've got my Perseus, and he so good. Anyway,
a giant handbag with the name Perseus on it as a brand logo and Badger's face. Yes.
yeah, that's it. You got it. All right, Skeleton Hunter asks, question: what manufacturer do you think they will choose to fill the medium salvage ship niche between the Vulture and the Reclaimer?
Sorry, X, just before we jump into that, the question about 318, did we do that? Before IAE?
Oh, yeah. I think
they've said categorically no.
Yeah.
IAE's coming with 317.4. 318 is currently mid-December.
I think, though, traditionally speaking, may make it an open PTU when they go over Christmas. So that's what I'm expecting. So they'll release 3.8 into PTU and just leave it open so they can have it open so everyone can play it over Christmas.
Yeah, and and that's assuming they haven't got it to the point where I think it's ready for release. So generally, that's what they do. I think they're clearly aiming to get it done by then. If they get it done earlier, they'll be happy. But I think, like you, we'll see it as an open release.
Yeah, it's been pretty common in the past, hasn't it? Like we've seen that.
Certainly on the big patches, yeah.
All right, so Vulture to Reclaimer, what ship do you guys expect? I think we've got the usual suspects, but I'll let you guys check them out there. So Badgers, we'll go with you first before me and Algared throw you under the bus and eat your breakfast.
Thanks, mate.
Yep, no worries. Cheers, that's what I'm here for.
Do you know what? Just because he said it earlier, and I like the thought, I'm going to go completely left field. Walkabout, however, first, thank you very much, sir, for the $5 super chat. Everyone brags about how they got ships cheaper, but I paid $608 for my Carrack using CCUs. Not sure how I did it, but I just wanted to brag.
That is the weirdest brag I've ever seen. I paid more. Yeah, awesome.
Well played, sir.
Yeah.
That's like a flex where the muscles go down instead of up. But yes, well done, you, sir. Well played.
There is a point where if you've got, and this is one of those things that we always talk War Bond CCUs is getting cheaper. But if you're someone who's got credits and you want to get a ship with LTI, which you don't have, you spend $40 or $20 on an LTI token, and then you use your credits and just buy credits to that ship you want. And it might mean you pay the same price, but at least you're getting that ship you want with LTI.
Yeah.
And you're using your credits up. So if you don't want to put more if you don't want to put more cash in to get those War Bond savings, you can still put a small amount in and then use your credits to get that ship. And it's not saving at that point, but you are getting the thing you want and using your credits. So It's not necessarily a bad thing.
If you want to do a link, Kim, he's just got his message deleted on Twitch. Just link me directly in Discord, or maybe even better, send it to Lemming or Can if he's around, and they will forward it on to us if they think it's valid. I have the link. This is what it says. What's the link about, Kim? Maybe tell us and we'll get the context. Anyway, for me...
Sorry, just wait.
Go ahead.
I didn't get to finish yet because the super chat came in. I'm going to go complete left of field and go consolidated outland. So there.
That's not left of field. That's what I want it to be. That's exactly what I want it to be.
Same.
I think we need a lot more consolidated outland ships. They to me are the like, if you think of the names like Nomad, Pioneer, Mustang, they're all like those ships that are like out on the fringe, you know, where you're out, you know, on your own doing the workload and stuff like that. And salvage to me speaks to that as well. So I'm expecting consolidated outland to be at least, you know, if we have a medium and a large, I'm expecting at least one of them to be that. But the other ones are obviously Argo and Misk. I just hope we don't get another Draco A, just like what happened with mining.
In the words of Captain Mal Reynolds of Serenity, here we are on the raggedy edge.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because me and Margaret were talking with Paul, right, about the mining one, and we just think they missed a total opportunity to take a grey cat, because you know how it's most likely to be the land miner. They could have integrated some of the designs from the Cygnus miner from grey cat into the land miner, and do you know what I mean? So we can't. They don't want to sell us that, but they would have been able to sell us something similar. A really good opportunity that they missed.
And it's hard because grey cat are like one of the oldest companies we've got in Verse. They're older, or as old as RSI and Argo, and they have a company where if you've got anything with industry, chances are you've got grey cat components or parts holding that together.
Even clothing, man. Like all their clothing was industry related too. Like that, some of the first clothing we saw was that. Yeah, they
are full on. You know, the household name of stuff, and they're so popular. You get knockoffs. You get knockoffs of a grey cat mining tool because they do it so well. And there was in law a whole theories where they were having troubles with knockoffs for cheap and giving them a bad name. And so, yeah, they are. If you're after an industry ship or a salvage ship, grey cat would be the ideal, in my opinion.
Not to mention, if we go back to the salvage stuff with the consolidated outland, that ship could hover off the ground like the Nomad.
Yep.
You know, it doesn't act like, so it can come down and it can hover over the vehicle it's salvaging and stuff like that. That'd be kind of cool.
Actually, I've got to correct myself because I just said it'd be ideal as a salvage ship. But grey cat are known
for the mining.
The key thing they're known is for mining.
Yeah.
And so they'd have been an ideal mining company, and yet CIG went, we'll ignore that.
So in typical Inforunners fashion, we're tangenting like 75 times a second. So anyway, next question. Reckon. It's like Tekken, but with an R. Reckon.
Yep.
Okay.
Reckon.
Question. Do you think that the Corsair is going to be flying brick or a little handle close to the Connie? Algared, I'll let you take this one because I know exactly what you're going to say.
I reckon it's going to be...
So how many times you can use reckon in this answering the questions things? And I'll tell you about
I reckon it's going to...
a few, I reckon.
Worst.
Yep. A few times I reckon you can use reckon.
Yep. Especially if you're an Aussie, because I reckon we use reckon a lot. So I'm going to reckon the idea and say that while I think it'll fly better in Atmo, the original design documents and brief that you can read in the Jump Point magazine, which I think was volume 3, number in March, whatever it was, I basically talked about it being an explorer. Specifically, and people could say, it's for exploring the inside of other ships. That design document mentioned at least 3 or 4 times it was an explorer. It had the same types of tools as an Aquila. It had the same types of, but it wasn't as good. But they also stressed that it does not fly as good as Aquila or its competitors. So that gives you an idea of its agility and other size, but it makes up for it by having heavier weapons. So
I think where it will, as I said to you before, is if those wings are lost, it'll be in Atmo that it feels it. So I think in space it'll be totally fine. except for losing all the missiles or stuff like that if it's blown
losing
off.
all your missiles or all your weapons, and
because it gives it a bigger footprint, doesn't it, when the wings are folded out? And
when you consider it's got 4 size 4 missile racks, so I think it comes with 8 size 3 missiles. But that's 32. I think that's 32 size 1 missiles you could have on there, or 16 size 2s.
Don't know my missiles, so I'll just trust your judgment.
That puts it in the same category for missiles as an Aquila.
Maybe we should ask the military boys. So, Badgers, you tell me, is there any repercussions for the big wings like that on a ship like that besides footprint? Because to me, I just think it makes a bigger target. Yeah.
Yeah, you're naturally building in a weak point. So it's a nice big target, and from certain directions, it's going to massively increase your radar cross section, which makes you far easier to detect. The idea being that if you look at things like the stealth bomber, it's diamond shaped, so wherever the radar comes from, unless it's directly overhead, when the beam comes in, it bounces off at an angle, and that massively reduces, because what you're doing is you're taking that signal beam from the radar. You're taking that beam and you're diffusing it all over the place. So what they get back is very weak, if anything. The only time the B2 appears to you is when it's right over the top of your head, at which point it's too bloody late. You're already, its ordnance is already in the air. And that's not long enough for stuff to lock onto you. So
that kind of adds to just my thinking is like, also if it has extra wings that give it extra dynamics in atmosphere, it means it could probably have a weaker engine. So that's the difference between it and the Connie, is that it probably uses the wings to its benefit, and it has a smaller signature than the Connie. So that's something that they've never talked about. And I kind of agree. It makes a lot of sense. A little bit of old school
energy signature.
Yeah, a little bit of old school tech that gives it a benefit. Yeah, okay, I can see that. But then also when push comes to shove, you just don't have that pure engine power. Okay, I can see that.
What's going to be really interesting to kind of figure out is, are we going to get some sort of glide mechanic? So, for example, if your engine is shut down, you still have forward velocity. So if someone EMPs you take damage, you get, you fly through an ion storm. Just thinking of the video that you did last week with level cap.
Yep.
Like the idea that could you glide it? Because all of a sudden, as a planetary lander, things like the Hercules, if we're talking about gliding, they look a lot more attractive now because you have wingspan, whereas something like the Connie, you shut the engines, things like that, and that's just going to go.
It's like the Starfarer when the Raven first came out, and everyone was going to town with the EMPs. You hit a Starfarer with the EMPs, and the Starfarer just went.
It's a really good point, because certain ships are going to be more EMP proof. So, like, if you had to put the Connie up against the Corsair, you would have to assume that the Corsair is probably just a little safer in atmosphere because it's got wings. It can glide. I never really ever kind of thought of that from. Well, I thought of the gliding, but I didn't think of it from oh shit, we've been disabled, and like something like the Hercules is just going to drop like a stone because it's just, I never really thought of that. That's interesting. There's another tactical advantage there that I've never considered. That's really strange. Okay. All right, next question. Ken Brist asks, any info on the redesigns such as the Retaliator? We have not heard anything, but I assume if we were going to hear it, it would be at the ship talk after AIE, which they tend to do.
During IAE.
It's usually the week after, but yeah.
Other than the really cool screenshots of the 600i recon rework that they're doing. They're floating about in loads of message boards, forums, Reddit. You go find them; it'll be nice and easy.
Send me a link and I'll pull them up. I was looking for them earlier, but I haven't been able to find them. So if someone can shoot me a link on Discord, and I'll bring them up and we'll have a talk about the 600i, because that is something that I am quite impressed with.
There's very few things that I can recall that they did that they've said in terms of, or indicated that's going on with Reclaimer or Retaliator. We did see kind of a concept art interior with the middle of the Retaliator made out of the med bed, but that was, or made out of the med section, medical.
That was done by a test for someone that was applying for a job.
Yeah, but that was basically someone applying for a job, and they said, okay, show us what you can do. And so that's not them saying this is, it's a concept, but it's not one that they're necessarily planning. It's just someone showing, hey, this is what I can do. And then CIG going, yeah, we like that. And could they do that? Yep. Are they going to do that? Who knows? Would it be nice if they did? Look, any variant or any module is a bonus for any ship, because the idea is you can take your ship, the ship you want, and you can fly it and do the things you want your way. People often say, oh, can I take this ship and do X? Can I do it Y? Yes, you can. Is it going to be as good as a ship that's specifically built for it? No. Even if it's got a module, it's still not going to be as good as, say, an Apollo is going to be much better at, say, doing first aid and care than another ship that's just got a module for it.
All right.
ISC is disrupted.
Yeah, I got that, but I was waiting for Algared to take a breath. But yeah, so do you guys want to watch ISC now, or do you want to do a few more questions? What's your?
We do an ISC. Should we go do an ISC? What do people think? Yeah. Let's do an ISC.
All right, let's go to the browser. I'm going to pop it over for you boys. Just give me a second. There we go. And I'm going to change what I'm displaying to you two. Just give me 2 seconds. So you guys can hear it. All right, here we go.
Hello, my name is John Griffiths. I'm a lead environment artist here at Star Citizen at Cloud Imperium. I'll do that again. Hi, my name is John Griffiths, and I'm a lead environment artist at Cloud Imperium Games. I'm heading up EU Sandbox 2, and we're working on the revamped underground facilities which you saw at CitizenCon. This is also my first ISC episode, and it's also the first in our lovely new office. So I hope you enjoy.
So just quietly, they're calling this internally ISC 2.0. So they're trying to redo. So yeah, we need to kind of judge this show on. They're trying to do something new as well, just so for algorithm edges. So yeah.
So after we've gone through that kind of concept development phase, where we're just fleshing out ideas, it's time to kind of think about what actually the underground facilities are going to be. How much time is the player going to be spending there? What are they going to be doing there? How many they're going to be? What kind of themes they're going to be? All that jazz we need to think about, and we also need to plan out how we're going to do it. So when we're in the stage of very early on in development, it's about kind of iterating quickly, getting into the editor, getting feedback on what we're doing, playing the location as a complete thing as fast as possible, because only when we see things in context of what they're going to be.
We're talking about rapid prototyping essentially here. Playing it, getting the feel down, basic shapes, gameplay.
Get a feel of it.
And move on. Yep.
Can we really make actual great decisions on what it is we're making? And this is a collaboration between art and design, mission content. The directors are involved. It's just molding the beast into something tangible, which we can then take into our planning stage to iron out what it is we need to create and how we're going to create them. So we've come out of pre-production. We now need to get a plan together so that the team can start working. So at the moment, we can see all these boxes. All the ones on the top are rooms, all the ones underneath are overlays. So overlays give us that variety. When the team looks at this, they don't have to come to me to ask, does the surface structure medium need work doing to it or not? They can read it for themselves here. This is great because it gives us a big overview of what's required for the location. And it also means that we can break it down into kind of content packs. So our tier 0 is everything that we would need to release this into the universe with some variation. Our tiers after that kind of are additional content, which might flesh out some of the UGFs or give it a new theme or that kind of thing. So some of the rooms that are in production at the moment, let's just skip over to them. So this looks like one whole thing. It's actually two things. So it's the surface structure, which is this guy in the middle, and this kind of surrounding hangar. You know, how do you actually get there? We've also got our physical elevator spaces. So if we go from the top, this is where you trundle down into the UGF on a lovely diagonal elevator. We've got the elevator shaft components themselves. So you might have really long elevator rides, you might have really short ones. And then where you end up at the bottom of the elevator ride, you know, this room is currently in progress as well. This is a more refined plan to begin with, but we still need to get into the actual numbers of how much time this will actually take to make. So then we come to our trusty Microsoft Excel. And in here, this is just putting estimates on how long we think things will take. So for us, that's...
It's a good thing to see that we're not the only ones that use Excel. I'm just going to say that. Anyway.
In this next phase, which is white boxing, we want to block the rooms out, we want to add content, we want to get the gameplay in there, we want to split things into overlays, test it with our ProcGen tool, and get all that done. So we estimate this like this, and we put in all of those rooms that we called out before. We've got all the room types it can be and how big or small the thing is. So using this kind of grid, we can call out, well, there's one room that's got a retheme, there's 2 rooms which are medium or large that need to be done, and this calculates how much time is required. So you can look at it from room type, you can do the time that way, or you can look at how many medium rooms it will take. You know, we can do it that way as well. This calculates it all, puts into...
That was a lot of hours. I almost want to go back. Did you see that? It was like that top one was like 228 hours. That is a lot of time.
And you'll remember, if you go back to that one I did years ago, which was the Inside Star Citizen, where they had was it Rhys Davies?
Oh, I don't remember.
Not Rhys Davies. That's the actor.
But I was just going to say though, you can throw multiple people at this though, because you can have one person on each room, so it does speed it up.
But he was looking at the managerial, allocation of time, and he was saying, okay, let's look at making the whale. What would we have to do? And they're going through the options, and he says, well, if we add this feature, that's going to add this much time to getting that out. And then people and I remember people in the chat going, oh, maybe we don't want that. And there was debate as to, do we want it, do we not? And so the more you add, the more rooms you add, the more time it's going to take to get it out. The less smaller it is, the quicker it is to get out. Hence why we see lots of fighters rather than big ships. So,
calculates it all, puts into a lovely little table, and then we can also call out how many artists there are, how many designers, how many days per artist, how many total days for a sprint, blah, blah, blah.
So just on that, just go back to that number on the right-hand side. Just go back to that spreadsheet.
This calculates it all.
Sorry.
How many artists?
Pause. Total days for all tiers. Days, 2,524. Am I reading that right?
Yep.
That's for all tiers, up to tier 3, yep.
That's going to be, obviously, that's going to be work days. So multiple people, you cut that down, right? But still, Jesus.
You chuck 100 people at that and it goes down to 252 days. So that's still a whole year to do that. And that's if you have 100 people on it.
But that's to get every tier level done. But it does. This also ties in with what you were just saying, Execute, in terms of you could put more people on, and he's even got that little table there. Hey, we put 5 people on. How long is it going to take us? So we put 6 people on.
And they can work that out too. There are diminishing returns and things like that. So All right.
There are how many designers, how many days per artist, how many total days for a sprint.
Hang on, what's total MS? Is that total months?
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, 13.
Hang on, what does it say? Milestone days. It looks like milestones.
Milestones?
Total milestones for all tiers.
13.7. Yeah, okay, cool. I was just going to say, because it almost might have told you how many people they were going to throw on it, because if it wasn't milestones and it was months, then you could go, this is how many people they're going to put on it. But they didn't say that, but
No.
Blah, 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 get all that done. And that gives us our kind of...
Hang on, isn't this guy a concept artist, yet he's talking us through all these design and producer decisions? I find that really strange, but okay.
I thought he said he was the lead.
Did he?
The lead environmental designer artist or something like that.
Hang on, I'm going to go back. I just want to see what it says.
My name's John Griffiths, and I'm a lead environment.
Oh, he's a lead environmental artist. Okay.
Very
Ignore all-
fast.
At what
Oh, what the hell? Missed a bit there.
Kind of ballpark figure to go with to begin with. I think I might have to retake this.
No. You're doing good. At what point do we ignore all? At what point do we ignore all this?
Okay, so it's all great having all of this, and it gives us a really good plan to begin with going forwards. But as you probably know, game development isn't really a concrete process. You can have all the numbers in the world, but you'll still have things that kind of crop up out of nowhere. That is what game development really is. So from this point now, we can get back into the editor, we can start fleshing out these rooms, we can start doing these overlays, we can start finding the variety and really bringing these new underground facilities to life.
One thing I want to add there too is making of the levels for Squadron 42 is obviously being, like how the ship pipelines got better over time. They've made levels for Squadron 42, so now they know the engine a bit better. You've got to assume that the fruits of that labor is coming back to bear fruit here as well.
And I know there'd be people who'd say, why have you showed us all that stuff at the beginning? When can we leave that? But that stuff where he's going through the process of what they go through, that's actually really good because it does show us it's a time, as he said, it's the nature of game development. We plan, we put our estimates in, but then something happens and those estimates get thrown out. But you can just see it's not them going, oh, we don't know, we're just guessing. It's, oh, we have no idea. You can see they've got a plan, they're working on the plan, and they're trying to build that out. So.
The new underground facilities first seen at this year's CitizenCon showcase have already moved into production, with designers and artists alike building out the currently spec'd out 93 different rooms and 196 overlay variations necessary to place them throughout the existing Stanton and upcoming Pyro star system. But while that's still many months away yet, let's go ahead and turn our attention to something coming in this December's Alpha 318, the imminent arrival of the next exciting parts of our new Gen 12 renderer. Now, bringing with it our collective hopes for improved performance, let's go now to Sylvan in our Frankfurt studio, who's got an update for us on the current progress.
Hey everyone, I'm Sylvan. I'm engine programmer here at CIG, working on Gen 12 for the past years, and I'm incredibly excited to share with all of you the latest progress we've made on Gen 12. But first,
He looks like a broken man.
He does a little bit.
It sounds like a broken man.
It's a little bit tired, isn't he? But anyway.
Yeah.
everyone,
That frozen shot you had.
on the same page, real quick, and explain what Gen 12 is, what it's not, and what it's trying to solve. This will just scratch the surface though. For a deeper look, I highly recommend watching our last year's CitizenCon progress update on Gen 12 and Vulkan. So Gen 12 in a nutshell is our new renderer, and we came up with this name as a natural step forward from DirectX 11, which Star Citizen right now pretty much all of you are using when playing the game. DirectX 11 is a graphics API which our engine interacts to make use of the GPU and renders all of Star Citizen's beauty. How fast a game engine can feed the graphics API or the GPU with rendering commands is dependent on two factors. First, the CPU performance, and second, the implementation of the rendering engine. And the latter is what Gen 12 is all about. It is from the ground up a complete redesign of our old rendering architecture, which decreases CPU submission time massively. The end goal of Gen 12, however, is to make use of a new graphics API called Vulkan, which will boost performance even more and also allows us to add new cool features like AI scaling, ray tracing, efficient multi-view rendering for VR, and Linux support, and more. This meant, however, we had to rewrite every single graphics feature and ensure that it's running smoothly and as expected on this new architecture.
Gotta wonder how much benefit Lumberyard's going to get out of that, because they could take all that stuff and use it in Lumberyard, and how annoyed would Crytek be that they're not getting it? because that is huge.
That is huge. Did you also hear that he said that he talked about it would be helping with the virtual reality, the VR? So
I did.
I know one of the things they talked about years ago was that VR would be supported by Squadron 40, by the game, and yet that is just an indication that they haven't forgotten that. It's still something they want to do. Whether they will be able to do it or how well they'll do it is a different thing, but it's still something they still want to do. So
I'd love to see a cruel irony of Crytek buying engine pieces back off CIG, but maybe I'm getting too hopeful. But that would be kind of funny.
There's an interesting business point here, actually, and it's one of the questions I still have in my mind about when we get close to live is how are they going to fund the ridiculous level of server architecture and everything they require behind the scenes without a subscription model? Because that shit ain't cheap. Yeah. And this, interestingly, if they are feeding this back into Amazon's newly built game studio and they're getting this quid pro quo, Amazon could be discounting them quite heavily in terms of their server architecture. And that could be why they, if that's the case, it increases the chances that we stay away from mandatory subscriptions forever, which would be great, right?
Yeah.
I think that's definitely a part of the thing is they gave them the engine for free, and in return they probably get server discounts, and in return they give them all the updates they get to the Line Beyond engine. I see that as a pro quo type of thing, and it makes a lot of sense to me. I'd agree with you on that, Badgers. Yeah.
But selling it off to Crytek, that would be
you
can have this for a super expensive fee.
But maybe it's not. Maybe it's not CIG that sells it. Maybe it's Amazon that sells it to Crytek. But I still find that funny as if that was the case, that they have to buy parts of their own engine back. Well, it's not their own anymore. But you get what I mean. But yeah.
Yep.
A daunting task, which takes years in a game like Star Citizen with its hundreds of different shaders, thousands of materials, and dozens of features actively used in production.
Sorry, Algared?
That drop down just of a cityscape. Gee, that looked good.
I was having a drink, but
Lots of different shaders, thousands of materials, and dozens of features actively used in production. You've seen our first milestone mid last year, 2021, with patch 3.14, when we had a few post-processing effects running on Gen 12 by default. This proved that our new rendering architecture was working as intended, and we could start heavily focusing on the scene object rendering, which is the biggest and the most time-consuming task for Gen 12. Almost a year later, with 3.17, we hit our next big milestone and could turn on Gen 12 for all our static geometry, including all scattered terrain objects. That was also the time when a lot of people saw an actual meaningful performance improvement in Star Citizen. Although, to be fair, that patch, Gen 12, was just one of many optimizations we employed there. The thing is, since then, the engine is running in a sort of mixed mode, which means most of the code is running through legacy and just calls into Gen 12, which is ported and works at the moment. This actually adds an additional overhead and is the reason why I didn't expect anything of a big performance improvement the last patch, and we didn't show anything or didn't announce anything. But I'm happy to announce, and very proud, that we're nearly done with porting absolutely everything to Gen 12, and not just the scene object rendering, but also our new path-centric rendering system. As we speak, we're fixing the last few things to get it fully ready for 3.18. This is not a promise, but we're working hard to make it possible. Also keep in mind that this first version of Gen 12 is just a it just works version. We haven't even started optimizing it yet at all, and you can expect huge improvements the following patches up until we can finally start making use of Vulkan. Enough talking, let's hop into the engine and take a look at a couple scenes while I'm explaining a few things to set reasonable expectations. Keep in mind...
That's huge. That's like absolutely massive. Anyone that plays the game, I'm sure everyone in chat will be saying this as well. It is an absolute resource hog, this game. So anything that can get it down and lower the level of entry, get more people into the game, because there's a lot of people who can't even afford to buy ships and stuff like that, let alone a computer that can run it. So I think that's just lowering the bar, more people. Yeah. Anything you guys want to add to that?
There's a crack in his voice that makes it sound like he almost wants to say, because when we get this, they'll let me go home again. Bless him. It just sounds like there's just someone behind him with a castle prod. Code, damn it. But yeah, it's...
But yeah, I think one of the things it does lead to is with those massive performance increases that he said, hey, we were able to get, that also coincided with increasing the server caps. So as they optimize, and this is not optimized, he says, this is just the benefits of just the base porting over. And then when we start optimizing, we're going to get more and more. So the demand on our computers is less, but also the ability to have more players on a single server is going to increase. So that's huge all round. So
Badges make it sound like a hostage video, like the balls are attached to a battery or something underneath the chair. But
we need to get this guy a message.
Yeah,
blink 3 times in quick succession if you need help. We'll get GSG9 to come and get you. Good Lord.
Now, Badges, I've got to say, look, if he signed a workers' agreement with Hurston, that's his problem. If he's been, if he's not happy anymore.
I'm not taking a lecture from workers' rights from Old Man Hurston or anyone else from that organization. But I tell you what, it's I think the key thing, and one of the things we've got to do as content creators, I think, for this game is set expectations, and help manage expectations.
Yeah.
We don't set them because we don't know what's going on until they tell us, right? Yeah. But
that's what
this is just the exactly.
That's what this guy's about to show us. But I think what we're about to say is that it's going to be a gradual progression.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly that.
Yeah. All right, here we go.
Find that all of these tests are done in debug builds with one set of hardware and can result in a totally different experience on a different machine. Also note that Gen 12 primarily boosts CPU performance. So if you have a weak GPU or playing in very high resolutions, which is really demanding for GPUs, your game is probably GPU bound and you won't see much of a benefit. Okay, so let's take a look at the scene here in Orson, which is well known to be one of the most expensive cities in game right now. Before we start, please do me one favor and don't look at the FPS.
Sorry, say again, Badges?
What does he mean, one of the most expensive cities?
In terms
resource-wise.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what I mean is
it's because of the
one
class.
of.
One of. Yeah, but it's because of the class. Anyway.
Far and away, it's in the lead. It is the most expensive resource expensive city by far.
Agreed. All right.
Please do me one favor and don't look at the FPS, because this is a highly unoptimized build with highly unoptimized code and very expensive debug tracking. So any discussion about FPS here is completely meaningless. All right. So on the right side, we have this G3D API call info window, which tells us precisely how many draw calls and how many API calls we do every frame. This is the work the engine has to do to send commands to the graphics driver, which determines how fast the CPU can feed the GPU with commands to render our frame. This is pure legacy mode. We have 47,000 API calls, and let's switch it to Gen 12. So this is Gen 12 mode. The API calls drop to about 33,000, which is quite significant for literally rendering the same scene.
25% drop.
Let's take a closer look behind the scenes. Well, let's take a look at this optic capture from that scene on Orson. Optic is a very helpful tool for us developers to get a very detailed understanding of what's going on in our engine. This includes what every thread is doing and when it is doing it. So let's take a look at the main and render thread, which are relevant for us in this context. Let's zoom in. And let's take a look at one of those frames here. So at the top, we've got the main thread. The main thread is what you could say the heart of the whole engine. It pretty much orchestrates everything, like when entities get updated, when physics get calculated, when do we render, and so forth. One of the main tasks is to figure out which objects are in our view system and which objects we want to render. This is what the main thread does on top of here. Once we figure that out, all that work is pushed into a queue to be processed by the render thread. At the bottom, we've got the render thread. And this is a very CPU intensive task, which is why it is leveraged by a completely dedicated thread. So what we can see here is that the render thread takes an immense amount of time to process one frame. In fact, it's so long that it even surpasses the work the main thread has to do. In this context, it means we are render thread bound, which means if we optimize the render, if we get it to run faster, we will see more FPS on the screen, as long as we are not GPU bound. So let's take a look at a Gen 12 frame. So here we've got a Gen 12 frame. Now the opposite is the case. The render thread runs faster than the main thread, which is indicated by this red bar here at the end. This means the render thread has to wait for the main thread to finish. And hence, in render thread bound scenarios, as long as we're not bound by the GPU, we will see an FPS increase. And if we zoom out here, we can see that every frame, the render thread is quite faster than the main thread. And yeah, waits up to 20 milliseconds on some frames. Whereas in Legacy, yeah, the opposite is the case, and the main thread has to wait. To summarize, with the current Gen 12 renderer, we saw a tremendous amount of API call reduction than before, and depending on the seed, 50 to 100% faster render thread performance. Let me emphasize again that all...
Hang on, what did he say there? I'm going to go back and wait.
Performance.
Missed that bit.
Tremendous amount of API call reduction than before, and depending on the seed, 50 to 100% faster render thread performance.
50 to 100% faster. Wow.
Let me emphasize again that all these numbers are not final, and we haven't been optimizing Gen 12 at all yet, and you can expect more improvements in the future. It also depends highly on the hardware you're running at, so once it hits live and you're using it, let me know how it's working for you. So what's coming next, you may ask? Well, once we're fully done with Gen 12, and we can actually run Vulkan, there's still a lot of optimizations we have to do, like actually completely getting rid of the render thread, employ a fully multi-threading rendering approach, doing async compute, and so much more. The sky is the limit here. And since we're developing Vulkan in parallel at the moment, it is to be expected that once Gen 12 is fully working, it won't take long for you to have it in your hands too. But more about that in the future when it's actually ready. Last but not least, a big shout out to everyone involved in getting Gen 12 ready so far. And yeah, I hope you liked this little sneak peek into the future of Star Citizen's rendering engine. And feel free to drop any questions in Spectrum, and I'll gladly do my best to answer them. Thanks.
So what did we learn this week? Well, we learned that resource planning is an essential step to ensuring your artists and designers are working efficiently to deliver locations like the new underground facilities quicker than ever before. That the new underground facilities themselves are already in production, and you can bet we'll be following along with their progress ahead of their scheduled release next year. And that the new Gen 12 renderer looks to relieve much of the current CPU bottleneck in the persistent universe, and that work will still continue after the next major milestone in the upcoming Alpha 3.18. Now don't forget that this year's Day of the Vara Halloween festivities are going on right now. You can check out all the details on the robertspaceindustries.com website. And if you're looking at what this new set and wondering what the heck's going on, maybe you should check out this year's CitizenCon 2952 full broadcast, which is available now on both our Twitch and YouTube channels. For Inside Star Citizen, I'm Jared Huckabee, broadcasting from inside the only constant. We'll see you back here next week.
Alrighty then.
Do you mind if I lead off on this?
Yeah, good.
CIG, if this gets to you guys, if you guys see or hear this, I need you to hear this bit. Yes, yes, yes. That is exactly what we've been asking for. First off, it was 18 minutes and not 8. But this is inside Star Citizen. There was more detail here. Some people are going to get upset that it's not just pretty pictures and screenshots and everything else.
Yep.
This is exactly what we've been asking for. It's a peek behind the curtain at what's going on. We're seeing your processes, not just the output. We're going to see the output anyway. It's in the game. This stuff, this talk is great. And it's so much easier to hear the be careful, here's the limitations, don't get too excited just yet, because when we're seeing why.
Yeah.
Yep. But we're getting it. And having these other people in it and involved in it is great as well. These new people we haven't seen before. Dude, if you need help, send us a message. We'll get you rescued.
Someone's saying in chat that they need a new video card. No, that's not the case. It actually makes it more accessible. You know, so lower end video cards like 360s and 370s and 260s, you know, those lower end ones, they're going to be able to do more because they've had DirectX 12 there, but DirectX 11 is rather outdated now. DirectX 11 is going like 5 years ago, you know, so it changed it quite a bit. Sorry, Algared, you want to say?
I was going to say in terms of the young chappie there, as he was talking, I started to think, no, he's not needing help. He's your stress counselor. The soft music and the voice just mulling you off into a sleep there. It was a nice calming voice, not a stressed aggro. Get me out of here! Yeah. Even though there are times when he did look tired. He did look almost relieved, and as he said, pleased to be able to share what he's been working, what they're doing. I was also surprised by, he said, you know, this is 50 to 100% quicker, and they haven't started optimizing it yet. That's
huge. The other thing I want to say, just to kind of reiterate what Badgers was saying about CIG and all that type of stuff. This really harkens back to what the shows used to be. You know, they'll really inform them. They don't have to be super long, right? Even if they were 8 minutes, right? They just have way more detail in them than the others had. They were like, this is more hardcore stuff, right? Like what we were saying last week when we did the poll. They need to make it for the people that watch the shows, and let's be honest, the last couple of years have been for a bit more casual and really low level stuff. This is a lot more like what we're after. Yeah, 100%.
It really goes back to like the bug smashers. Now, I didn't always like bug smashers. It was often too technical. I didn't understand what he was saying, you know. But what I did enjoy about bug smashers was that he'd say, "This is the bug we've got. This is the process or the steps we've had to go to try and solve it." And so you saw, okay, this is how they're solving these problems. They're aware of the issues.
That wasn't really the inherent issue. The inherent issue is they caught onto that and they kept doing the same thing over and over and over. So it's the same thing. Don't obviously talk about Vulkan every day of the week as an example, but it's cool to have an update, once a quarter or whatever, and move through the company and show off different things. And that was what became the problem with Bug Smashers, though, was they were doing it every week, and that's what killed it.
And even when they weren't doing it, they were doing Witch Glitch, which was kind of the same type of thing. So you didn't want it all the time, but you did want that type of deep dive into things so you could understand the process. And as Badger said, that was really good.
Yeah. So
it was pulling back that curtain and showing us stuff.
Yeah. Access on Twitch is saying, is it almost like a briefing room episode or around the verse episode? Yeah, it does feel like it harkens back to those older ones. But you can also see that they've upped the production quality as well, which I don't really particularly care for. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other. I just want the information. So at the end of the day, the information is a lot better than it was. But yeah, I don't know. Do you guys care about production value? Maybe actually, I'm going to do a poll on that. I'd actually like to know what everyone thinks in that regard. But start a poll. Here we go. Yeah, go ahead.
Just while we're going on with that, I mean, I think yes. I think when the subscribers side of things, which is apparently what is funding all of this stuff, is bringing in what it's bringing in, I don't see why they couldn't. If it's a toss-up between the two, of course we'll lose the production value to keep the info. But I don't see why not, because also it's going to be other people's peek at this, right? This is what CIG... So yes, it's info to us, but someone who goes and finds the Star Citizen channel, this inside Star Citizen, they're not going to click on the hour one. They're not that bothered. These 18-minute segments, these sub 20-minute segments are going to be, how they approach. And if they don't have some production value that reflects the fact that CIG have surpassed 500 million in crowdfunding, it's going to put people off.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that type of thing that they did there really did show, okay, they're not, I got the impression they're not wasting the funds. And I know that people would say, when you look at the size of a company, 500 million, as I think we've said several times, is pittance compared to what other places are getting. Over a 10-year period, that's nothing.
Yep.
So...
Well, the one I called back was, if you look at what PUBG made last year, they made 2.6 billion.
Yeah.
They were making 8 million a day. No, sorry, 8 million every 10 days. My bad, sorry. 8 million every 10 days. That's pretty crazy.
Whereas Star Citizen might make $1 million a month or $2 million a month.
Well, yes, yeah, they made 100 million in the entire year. So what they made in 80 days type of thing, or whatever, 100 days or whatever. Yeah, so crazy. All right then, I think we'll get back to the questions, which we have a lot more of now.
Because they've been constantly streaming in just to make us happy.
Yep. So Robert Volz asked question, do we hope to see alien ship at IAE? I'll let you take that one. No. No, that's a no. All right. No alien ships. Badges hates aliens.
If I did have an alien ship, I'd love to see a Tavaran. Because why not?
What about you, Badges? What would you care for an alien ship?
Yeah, sure, something from the Kavak.
I don't think you're going to get that, but yeah.
As long as it's not a slink ship, I don't care.
Yeah.
So yeah, as I said, the rumor we kind of heard, that I've heard, is that there's the bike that was meant to come at AIE is coming, and it's what race was it? I can't remember what race it was, but it's an alien hover bike of sorts. So yeah,
as long as it's not Xi'an, I don't care.
Right, Panda Zubs asks question. I know you guys don't recommend the Perseus as a pledge, but how much do you guys think it will be worth in game? I ended up pledging for it. Ha ha ha. Yeah. Man, you want it, you get it. It's again, we've got to give generalized advice. So, I like the ship. I think Algared likes the ship. Badgers likes the ship. It's just its value proposition. It is clearly a ship that's around $350 that is being sold at double that.
Yep.
And do I think combat ships cost more in game? Absolutely. So maybe it is a $400 ship, but so if you base it on that, it's probably the same price as the Reclaimer, which puts us at what, 15 mil.
Mm-hmm. Can I just say I love the fact that I don't get to say anymore. I don't own one, and I love it because I do own one, thanks to particular people in stream, John Smith, all you guys that were in the stream 2 weeks ago. Love you much.
Yeah.
We love you.
But yeah,
I don't know about Algared, but I'm really looking forward to being on the big badgers face and shooting some stuff at some point. What about you, Algared?
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah,
it'll be a nice change from some, being on the
yeah.
Yeah, you'll be waiting a while, fellas.
Well,
but yeah,
it's Captain Badgers McBadgers, so yeah.
The bottom is like value is where you find it, right? And it's a game. And at the end of the day, when we talk about the money, you've got to talk from an objective perspective, because otherwise you can justify literally anything.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, if you're sat there going, I really want to pass this, I really want to pass this, I really want to pass this,
then get a Perseus.
Nothing's going to scratch that itch other than getting a Perseus. And whether you buy it or earn it in game is the only question really you've got to ask yourself. So,
if you decide to buy it, how you buy it, whether you buy the upfront price, whether you CCU from other things, use credits, whether you use war bond CCUs.
I will play devil's advocate just for a second here. The other thing is we've got the Polaris is the only real ship in that group of three as well. And there's only a $25 difference from two of the ships in the three below to that. And the Perseus is the cheapest of those three in that group, right? So again, if you buy the Perseus and you find that, okay, so the Perseus is that one of the group, it's the kind of tanky one. If they bring out another one that is similar to the Perseus, you can upgrade to the other one. And it probably realistically will be a bit better value, But only time will tell. We can't predict the future in that regard.
And generally, what we do is we try to look at the ships and look at what other ships do a similar job or other jobs, and then compare the prices. And as Execute said, we like the ship. I really like the ship. I like the look of the ship. I'm not sure it's as long range as some people think, just the way CIG talked about it. But I really like the ship.
Yeah.
But I think it's too expensive.
And unfortunately, this kind of comes back to the whole thing we always say is we always want more information to make an informed purchase. And as time goes by, sometimes ships get better, sometimes ships get worse. There's just no way to, which is hard. It is really hard to buy a ship and then you get upset. And being here as long as we have, I'll just pick one example: the Herald. Right? I brought the Herald. I was really into the asymmetry of that ship. They brought it out and it completely changed what the ship was because they got rid of the asymmetry. So they did change it. And I can think of a couple of ships like that where they've literally... Cartwells, and that's probably one of the biggest ones because that actually affected the function. Where it was a 2-player ship and they changed it to 1, you would be 100% entitled to a refund, I think almost in any country because of that. But yeah. All right, next question is from Shinobi Trip. The Nautilus is too niche to be grouped with the frontline brawlers like the Hammerhead and the Perseus. Do you think this leaves a gap for the Anvil sub-capital ship? The Nautilus is too good to be frontline brawlers.
I'm going to say no, because it even though it does have the mines, which are a big mass of its combat capability, it still has at least one turret.
And there it goes. I was going to say there is no outlier ship in that group yet because we've got the Polaris that's the kind of the scissors. We'll probably get a tank, which is the Rock. And
it's got 7s on it. Hey guys, I'm back.
Yeah. And he comes back with a flurry. So I was just kind of cut in there in algorithm and was saying that the Nautilus is like the paper in the analogy of rock, paper, scissors in that area. And that just because that's the paper doesn't necessarily mean you'll get another mine ship on the way up.
Yep. Believe it or not, I actually, when the camera drops out like that, I don't lose you guys. I actually see you guys still going. So it's quite weird.
Yeah. But at least you're informed that we've lost you, so you know what's going on. You probably, if in that case, then you're probably best to just stop talking and be absolutely quiet so it doesn't come back with a flurry. But anyway.
I do once it disappears.
Oh, okay, there we go. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know. Well, there's no way to kind of guess what that outlier ship would be. You have to assume that we're going to get a tank, like a tank ship. But the outlier, it could be anything. It could be, it could be that middle class carrier, like a mini Kraken or an upscaled Liberator. It could be. It could be a full-on drone ship. You take your pick. It could be anything, right? So we're only guessing. We could only ever guess.
We've heard very little about it. Like if you go to the in-law stuff, all we know is they're building a ship on Killian.
Yeah,
and from the lore, we know Killian built the capital ship.
Oh, I'm not talking about Algared. Sorry, I have to cut in there and interject. I'm not actually talking about specifically the annual capital. I'm talking about how you've got rock, paper, scissors, right?
Yep.
And the paper one specifically, which is always an outlier. The only thing we can say for certain is they are all pitched at combat. Different forms of combat: rock, paper, scissors. But there's no way to tell what that's going to be. You can guess to the cows come home, and someone's probably going to get it, right? But there's just no way to tell, And if mines are taken, I think we could probably say most likely it's not going to be a mine layer. I think that's probably the, And then you look at some of the
that size, yeah,
and you look at some of the other outliers as well. So you can go up and down. So you look at the Idris and the Kraken, their kind of support craft. There could be another support one that you guys tell me, do you expect another ship in the Polaris size to have a hangar? And I'd have to say no, because then it kind of shits a little bit on the Polaris. So what other function badges? I'd kind of turn to you then. In this, you're the military guy. What would you expect, or could you potentially give us another example of something that we haven't seen as an attack craft? Like you know what I mean by an outlier, right? Like it does it a bit different. So it's not a mine layer. It's not a hangar. What could it be, Badgers?
You've got the Polaris for me fills the general purpose frigate role, although it's not one. It fulfills that. It's got the ability to patrol. It's got the ability to hurt stuff with its torpedoes. It's got its self-defense. It can pick on medium stuff. It's got the fighter to be able to do that. It's got its boarding and its armory and its brig. It's an all-rounder. It's it's the Swiss Army knife. It may not be perfect at one particular thing, but there are very few situations it's going to walk into where it doesn't at least have some options available to it. You look at the Hammerhead and the Perseus. Hammerhead anti-fighter, Perseus anti-sub-cap. So what's missing from that for me is the anti-cap. And whether that becomes something that's like, I don't know, a hull built around one of the rail guns that we see on the bottom of the Bengal. Although you could argue with some utility that torpedo bombers actually do that. So your Retaliator and your Eclipse are killing the capital ship Slayer. The Nautilus, I'm not entirely sure I agree with the premise that it's too niche to be grouped with the frontline brawlers. It certainly does things, as you say, as an outlier, different ways. I think a couple of ways to do this. Well, I mean, the obvious one for me is an E-warfare ship in that class.
Yeah, I was thinking that myself, E-warfare, or even one with a really large EMP. Takes out all the fighters, everything.
But we are looking at the sub-capital ships. So we're looking at the Nautilus, we're looking at the Hammerhead, we're looking at the Perseus, we're looking at whatever else they put in. And I don't think any of those ships really are weird. You can see they've each got strengths and weaknesses. But when you start looking at the Polaris is a totally different class. And my question for you, Badgers, would be, what other ships do you see we've got in the Polaris class?
Well, that's what I just asked him, Algared.
Yep.
Polaris Idris is the obvious, for me, the obvious comparison. You've got, although they fulfill, I mean, I would argue the Idris is just better, more ships available, higher crew count.
And it's also a larger class of ship, isn't it? So
yes, it is. Yeah.
So,
which is interesting because the Perseus is of the same class apparently, and I think that's one of the questions we're going to come on to later. Is why is the Perseus a frigate when the other frigate in the game is an Idris? They are clearly not comparable in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, it's interesting. You know, the Perseus should be a gunship like the Hammerhead. It's just a different size of gun.
And it's weird because you see on some areas they give it kind of this frigate nomenclature, but in the way they've described and discussed it, it is a river gunboat. It's basically your Vietnam, Yangtze River gunboat that's going up and down the river with heavy guns and armor, and it's not a frontline. It's not a frontline ship of a line. It's a frontline ship, but it's not a ship of a line like the Polaris is, as the smallest of these ships of a line. So
So real quick, the polls on Twitch, 70% of people said that they value the production value, and 60% on YouTube. So it's interesting. So you do care about that. I should have probably put it in context. I probably should have said, do you care about production value over information? Because I think that would have a different answer. But sometimes I don't answer, word them correctly, so I apologize for that. But for me, that's kind of what I meant. But maybe people missed it. So for me, I value information over production, over quality of the actual show, as in the way it looks. Because the best show I think they ever did was the Calling All Devs, and that was just Skype calls. That was awesome. So yeah. All right. Next question is from Vital Win, who asks, I have a Caterpillar with LTI. It's only $20 to CCU to an Endeavour. What is your opinion between these two ships for a small org fleet? You want to take that one, Algared? And then I'll...
Why not both?
Yeah, why not both? If we're talking purely value proposition, though, yeah, you've got to go with the Endeavour.
Yeah, certainly in the long run. My hesitance there is the fact that the Caterpillar is going to have all that modularity down the pack and down the track. And
well, hey, here's the easiest fix: pick up a CCU and sit on it.
Yeah,
have the Caterpillar, play around with it for a bit. And if you change your mind and go, oh shit, that Endeavour got really big, and I'm kind of really into medical and science and all that, $20, just buy it with credit and sit on it.
Yeah.
Given the price of Endeavour at the moment, it's so hard to not say, just get an Endeavour.
Yeah. But yeah, you can play the field and get both, can't you? So yeah,
I would seriously recommend Vital. I would, if you're able to, and it's comfortable. Obviously, this financial advice comes with a caveat. If it were me, mate, what I would do is I would save $10 a month. You'll have enough for a second Caterpillar by the time we see the Endeavour.
Yep, that's true.
And then you CCU one and keep the other. And
maybe just pick up a CCU to sit on, so the price doesn't increase. So you get yourself like a Gemini to an Endeavour, and it costs you $10. There you go. Here's right though, yeah. But that's a really good way to do it, because a lot of people have problem with that big burst of catch, don't they, Badgers? But they, if it's 2 years away and you just put $10 away you got it in no time, well, in 2 years. But you get my point. It makes it a lot easier pill to swallow with cash flow. So yeah, it's
one of the things we've talked about in the past with gift cards. It's what I used to do. I used to pay day come, and I'd buy a $20 gift card, because I knew a sale's coming or a new ship's coming. And back in the day, if you had gift cards, you'd buy the ships. You'd buy the ships at concept with LTI and all the bells and whistles with your credit. So it didn't matter.
Thank you for the super chat from Lee Bob, who says, thank you for the content. What about a medium bounty hunter ship like the Razor Crest type of ship? Well, I think that's the Redeemer. I don't know about you. And I would even hazard that it's not that different from the Razor Crest. What would you guys say to that? I think the Redeemer, because they've talked about a cargo pod module for that, and like the Avenger, you just put bounty hunting pods in it. There's your bounty hunting ship. So,
well, didn't they, as you often point out in the stretch goals where they were talking about modules for ships, didn't they actually use the Redeemer as a specific example of that? And one of the examples they used was for bounty hunting.
The cargo pod and the bounty hunting. That is absolutely correct. So yeah, for me, Lee Bob, that is the Redeemer. And I own the Redeemer, and I'm big. People like Badges here and SA are the two people convinced me of that ship. So yeah, if you ever see me in the Redeemer, you can blame Badges, and maybe I should call mine the Badges McBadges Refinery or Redeemer, whatever. Yeah,
just call it the Badges Appreciation Fan Club. We'll all know what you mean. Yeah, I think the other side with bounty hunting specifically is sometimes bigger isn't better. You know, we all want bigger and all that sort of stuff. The reason I love the Hawk so much is because it folds and it's got those specific images of it landing in streets. On planets like, you guess it's something like ArcCorp, but it's got such a Blade Runner feel about it, and that ability to just literally go from quite an aggressive profile to just fold up and literally plop into the middle of nowhere. I mean, you even get the vibe of like Batman, where he drives the Batmobile into the alley, and then they're like, there ain't no way he's escaping from there, and he flies out. Oh, well, fuck.
I got the impression of it being like a gargoyle, you know. I see it sitting on, perched, all folded up, just hanging off the edge of Hurston Tower, just looking out, just ready to swoop. It's got that kind of gutsy, nasty, horrible.
And the other one is Master Mode.
Feel.
Master Mode's badges with the kind of highlighted what interdiction ships are going to be. So you've actually got different types of bounty hunting now. You've got your fighters that kind of, you know, like the Redeemer, like a gunship that's designed to destroy or disable. But you've also got ones that are catch up and grab and slow down. So I almost think, you correct me if I'm wrong here, but it almost seems to me like bounty hunting is going to be, instead of going into bigger ships, you're diversifying into different types. And so if you're in a group, you are, you know, one's in the interceptor, one's in the gunship, you know, so you can do different roles to kind of almost have like different classes if it was in a co-op game to bring someone down. So you got all these different powers, so to speak, to bring to capture them and bring them to heal.
I did like that when they brought out the Cutlass Blue. I don't know how many people remember, but when they first brought it out, it came with a stun baton and cuffs. So you could. So the idea was you'd go down a planet and you could actually go walking on streets with your cuffs and stun baton, find your target, cuff them, take them to the cell. But
it does not surprise me at all that is something that old man Hurston noticed. Hashtag just saying.
I also noticed the piano with the Phoenix. You know, I'll just point that out.
Yeah, no, and what was quite funny, and this is where my brain just goes off on a tangent, is I was thinking, well, why would you want a medium? What sort of weight of bounties do you think you get to justify a bigger ship like that, other than the obvious? And my brain immediately went to the ship from that Predators use. So it's like, maybe we're going to go and hunt lots of people.
You mentioned alien ships before, an alien bounty hunting ship.
Yeah. Yep. Give Skull trophy racks. That's what we need.
That would be a Xi'an ship, I'm sure. I'm sure the Xi'an do that type of thing. They're slinks.
Yeah, with a Xi'an questioning chair, you know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Lots of spikes and probes for random reasons. We don't know why. Vate7 asks, do you gentlemen think it is possible to get good war bond deals at IAE? Do CCUs... like CCUs from an MSR to an Orion for $100 new money, or is it a thing of the past? Not that cheap, but it does. If it tracks with what we saw at Invictus, I would have to say they dropped it by 25%. So yeah, the best ones are probably behind us.
But I think what we find is that the more steps you can put into those CCU chains, the more savings you end up getting. So going MSR to Orion, you'd never want to do that as a single jump. You'd try to do that in several smaller jumps if you could, just because the more jumps you can get, the more savings you can get on those Warbond CCUs. That's the type of jump I'd do if I had the credits and I knew I wasn't putting more money in, then I'd look at that. But at that point, you're not getting a Warbond CCU discount, so...
All right, question. Any thoughts on why the Perseus was moved to frigate status on the website? I did reach out to Concierge with no real answers. Badges. I think that one's specifically targeted at you, sir.
No clue.
I've kind of said
Jake.
that the names really don't matter at this point. You know, we've talked about Corvette and Frigate, and you even said it yourself, Badges, with the Perseus and the Idris, like they're the same name but different classes. I think that could just all be redone just before release. They could say, all right, so this is this class, this is this class, and this is this class, and the only thing is that they kind of don't know enough of the military stuff, so they could all just rejig it towards the end. And I don't think most people would care, because if you can fix it up, at least then it's correct, right? And at the moment, as you said, it's a little bit all over the place. Yeah. So for me, I think it's just rather than worrying about it now, just rejig it just before release, and then they don't have to chop and change all the time.
Yeah.
The one thing that's... go on, Badges.
Do you do yours first, mate? Because mine's a little bit of history, so it might go off on a tangent.
I was going to say, the one thing that CIG have often said is go by the description of the role of what the ship's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And that general statement gives you an idea of what the ship's role is. But other than that, who knows? Ask Jake.
Ship names and conventions for military ships are governed by a treaty that countries around the world keep revisiting. So there was one slightly before World War II, which was aimed at preventing something like, World War II, which went really well, as you can tell.
It was the 1921 Five Nation Treaty, I believe.
Yeah, it was in I want to say Philadelphia, but I don't think it was. But then they did another one afterwards, and in both circumstances, destroyers tended to be larger and more technical than frigates. And that's certainly the case now, except, what we'd lost was during World War II, there were so many more ships. There were light cruisers, medium cruisers, armored cruisers, heavy cruisers, scouting cruisers, AA cruisers. And then there were battle cruisers, battleships.
Well, you can look at the Corvettes. The Corvettes were varied and just as varied. So
exactly. So they added in all this stuff, right? And right now, remembering that what they've described CIG as multiple times over the years is World War II in space. We need to keep looking back as a little bit of inspiration to what was going on back then, as opposed to what's going on right now. Right.
A weird turn of phrase, though, is also you're showing the passage of time in what you're saying there. So a Perseus might have been that type of ship, and later on when they made the Idris, that was that type of shit. So you're literally saying how the classes have changed. So they could be the same class, just over time, the definitions of those classes changed.
Yep. And I suppose the other thing to consider is those treaties in World War II were actually limiting the tonnage of ships. So that was how you tended to rate your ships. It's the tonnage and the guns of the ships. So those two factors were what influenced what the ship was. Battleships had big guns, big armor. Cruisers tended to have big guns, little armor. Battle cruisers were kind of somewhere in between.
Yeah.
But those two things were what determined the ships. And so you had ships can only be this tonnage. You can only build ships of this tonnage. And so you'd go, okay, what's the biggest guns I can put on?
Yes. Tonnage, speed, and weapon size were the governing factors. So ships with guns above 6-inch were seen as one thing, whereas below 6-inch were seen as something else. Because there are ships from history. I think the Polish at one stage built the heaviest armed destroyers that had existed in that class, because the guns were larger than the rest of the ship would. Basically, they went, we'll take the tonnage and the speed from this category, and then we'll put some off great big guns on it from another category. And they were still classed as destroyers, but so a little bit of a kind of a history around the houses, but exactly what Al says, more about the role than anything else with CIG, and that's how it differs from history.
You've also got to take the game and science fiction and it's in space into account as well, so that changes a few things there as well.
Yeah.
Negativity there with the super chat. The Endeavour will never release for effectively never within 15 years. Everyone who buys it is a sucker. No, I don't agree with that at all.
Oh, your negativity is not appreciated.
Yeah.
you are negativity. You must remember, you are on the channel of the Cult of the Endeavor and the Crucible.
He's definitely playing up to his namesake, though, isn't he? Yeah.
He is.
Lawless 911 SC says, "Yeah, that's on brand." Yeah, bang on.
Exactly. Yeah. Stop and Sniffer asks, how much USD do you think the Argo MCV factory ship will cost? Now, for me, I look at the starter ships. I think the cheapest is the Red at 125. I want to say, I could be wrong, 135 up to about 240. So you got quite a large breadth there now of ships. We've got the Raft from Argo that's at the lower end. So I don't know. You guys tell me. As a construction ship, to me that seems to put it up more towards the 200s or over. What do you guys think?
If CIG decide, go Badgers.
I'm just saying, I think it will cost dollars.
Yep. I was going to say, if CIG decide that construction means that it will make more money off the cuff, then it'll be more expensive.
Yeah.
But it'll be right. I can't see it being significantly higher than the other industry starter ships like the Mole, the Vulcan.
Because it's one of those ships that has to be fed, doesn't it, Algared? It has to be given the resources to do what it does. So it is going to have a cost associated with it. They might give you enough to build, like they did with the Pioneer. They gave you enough to build one outpost off the bat, but then you've got to go get all those resources to go to the next step. So, and it'll be the same thing with this, I have no doubt. So,
whatever.
I mean, that lowers it a little bit, maybe. So, yeah, I'll be interested to see where it lands.
Maybe a Vulcan pricing.
Yeah, well, that's kind of where I'm at. Yeah,
I think one of the things to take from the last, was it the Expanse we were talking about, or was it one of the others? I think the last ship that released like this, we were all pleasantly surprised at the price. I think we'd all massively overestimated what it was going to cost. So hopefully CIG keep on that vein and keep going that way. That would be great.
But then we've got other things that have dropped, like the steel, that just freak us out. You know, so it goes both ways. So, but
steel is a steel.
If you look at the gap of professional starters, it's like 135 to, I think it's almost 250. So if you were to just safely say 150 to 250 and plan for that, I think you'd be okay. So yeah. All right. Next question is from Aurelius Dominus, who asked, question, is it possible that the fluids for life support can become a task to deliver for the Starfarer? Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Anything with the cargo bay.
Well, they are the types of things any cargo ship could be delivering. But Starfarer with its tube to be able to link in,
Yeah, that's the advantage of the Starfarer. It's specifically designed for liquid transport. So yeah, absolutely. Anything that's liquid based. Dan Little 2010 asks, just got here. Did I miss anything big? Yeah, Algared lost his hair. He had a full head of hair and it's just all gone. We don't know where it disappeared. It was rainbow and mohawky all at the same time. It was bizarre. It actually moved though, like it had eyes, like it was a I don't know, I'm making this up as I go along, obviously. But
what's really worrying about this question is this got asked about 15 minutes into the stream.
I know, so it's taking that long. Jason Mason asks, anybody know real reason why Paul Jones left CIG? And I said because he killed a Carrack, but I think he's been there for 9 years. Probably just he wanted something different, you know. Like if you've been at something for 10 years, you might want to move on to something else. So that's why we're announcing we're no longer doing Star Citizen, and but yeah, you get what I mean. It changes because of the holiday. But you know, if you're working at the same job for 10 years, I think you'd want to move on. He might have family stuff. You just don't know. That is life.
Yes. We got to remember, you know, we're waiting for a game to be built. Right? There's still people careers in this, and he's probably wanted to move on to advance up to the next level, and that's not easy in a company that's mid-project because everyone is focused more on completing the project than they are on the next step of their career. And he's obviously going, you know, I feel like I know this pipeline. I'm not being challenged as much as I was before. I feel like I need to get into the management side of things, and this opportunity right now doesn't exist in CIG. I don't know when he's... Sorry, go on.
I was going to say, I'd like to think he was headhunted.
That would be great if he was. That would be really good for him.
So, but we have no idea.
Okay, next question by Dan Little 2010 asks, do you think there will be a Sunu competitor or Consolidated Outland competitor to the Cuddy, Lancer, and now Spirit?
Sport.
Sorry, Algared?
Sport.
Sorry, you're breaking up. I didn't hear what you said. Can you say again?
I said Sport. He's misspelled Spirit. So.
Oh, okay.
That's a Sport. Sounds like
anything's possible. Do we need it?
Yeah.
Is always the question. I still think that there's definitely more room in that lineup than there is like down at the other end at the starter stuff. So yeah, potentially, but what are those roles? Like, we don't really need another cargo ship, unfortunately. So what are the specialist things that can add? And maybe when you roll that back, you start to look at other professions like, the industrial stuff. So you come to repair, you come to, the salvage, the mining and all that stuff. And so you start to look. So when I look at that, maybe we could get a smaller repair ship, that's smaller than the Vulcan, and it's aimed at vehicles or something like that, so.
And that is something Paul, I know, used to argue. He used to argue that the Vulcan is a medium-sized ship, so we should get a small one. And we always argued that the Vulcan is the starter of repair. But doesn't mean they can't change that down the track and bring another ship in. So, yeah.
And things have changed too. Vehicles wasn't a thing so much back then either, so it's changed. Jason Mason asked question. Oh, did you want to talk about that at all, Badges, or are you having me to move on?
No, you're good. I think you've hit the points that I was going to cover.
Jason Mason asked, medical ground vehicle on ballista chassis, 100%. Badges, talk about that because you're the military guy. What would SA say about that? Because I know SA goes on about that all the time, doesn't he?
I love how this is military. It's like dance, monkey, dance.
Yeah. Dance. Come on, dance.
It makes sense. At this point we were talking about medical Pisces, medical rover.
Yep.
The reason I like the medical rover is because it's a non-military vehicle, right? It's an exploration vehicle. It's done for the civilian market. And a med bed in there would be nice, right?
Yep.
Because then you're not always having to go to military. The reason I like the rover is also because it fits in a lot more stuff than the ballista does, or the Spartan.
Yep.
So yes, that would also work. Maybe more space. And one of the things I think we've kind of talked about is if you've watched anything like Black Hawk Down, you'll have seen this, and because this is accurate from the film, is that they just sling people into vehicles and get them away from combat.
Yep.
So it doesn't necessarily need to be a med bed. It could literally be racks for stretchers.
Yeah. Well,
and you just put the stretchers onto a rack like a bunk bed, 3 of them either side. You walk down the middle. You take them away then to an Apollo or a Red or a anything with a medical facility, and then deal with them. That makes a lot more sense militarily. You don't ever put this stuff at the front line, and if you don't put it at the front line, why would you make it as armored as something like the Spartan?
Yeah.
You look at any field ambulance in use now, it's more about the space, it's about height, it's about giving medical personnel room to move on stuff, and that's not necessarily synonymous with putting half an inch of armor plating on stuff.
It makes me think it's more of like almost like a hot, if you were to put it in the Spartan, which as SA's talked about, it's more of a hot zone instruction. It's like it's just driving in there, picking you up and getting you the hell out. But as you said, you can just do that with anything if you're trying to get out of there. So for me, the more smaller a vehicle is, the more popular I think it's going to be at the end of the day too, because when you have a smaller vehicle, you can have more cargo. So like I said with the UTV last week, if you can have the Cyclone or the UTV and they both carry 1 SC of cargo, you're going to take the UTV because you fit more cargo in the ship and it's lighter, so more benefits.
Sorry, just going to jump in because a really good point's been raised in chat about John Crew. John Crew? Yeah.
Paul
Jones, sorry.
Paul Jones.
He made, Justin Daly says, he made 2 Boldly Go references. I'm curious if he was snatched onto a Star Trek project. Good point. Well, mate, we'll keep an eye out for him.
Yep.
Sorry, Agrid, you were saying.
Either way, I just want to say, either way, I wish Paul Jones the best of luck in all his new endeavours, regardless. Sorry, Algared.
Yeah. So with the idea of the medical vehicle, I look at the vehicles we've got that are being used in Ukraine at the moment. I know the Australian Bushmaster does have a medical setup. Now, I see the Bushmaster as being a Perseus, not a Perseus, as a the rover, the Ursa.
Yeah.
So I see it as an Ursa
Jesus,
type.
Agrid, you're always talking about the Perseus. Give it a rest.
Well, I do have one, so and I do like the Perseus. So
do I.
But so I see the Bushmaster as being like an Ursa rover, and the Bushmaster does have a medical ambulance version. When I get to the Spartan and the Ballista, my question for you, Badges, is where do you see that in terms of vehicles that we currently see in the military at the moment? What scale is it? It's certainly not a Bushmaster or that type of vehicle. So where do you put it? And it's not a main battle tank, so whereabouts?
That's a good question. I might need to think about that for a bit. So where do you think it fits? Between what and what?
I think it's just like a light tank or a lighter vehicle. So it's kind of like the Spartan to the Nova. You know what I mean? It's just to me, the Spartan is not that dissimilar from a Bushmaster. It seems very similar to me. Yeah.
I think it could sit in that class, right? It's I mean, the question is, what do we think the Spartan is? So in the military, there's something called the M113, which is old. I think it's practically phased out now if it's not gone already. But this is the APC that you'll have seen that they used in Vietnam.
Yep.
And that could be used as an APC. You could mount larger weapons to it. You could use it as there were medical variants of the M113. I forget the numbers, so I'm just going to keep referring as a 113. And that, to me, potentially is the Spartan level. I think there's potentially room for the Bushmaster to be, as X says, something between the Spartan and the Tonk. I don't think we're getting bigger than the Nova. It might be bigger size-wise, but it's going to be the same class.
We can go both ways, can't you? You can go less armoured, more armoured. You know, we're getting into nitty-gritty here. Is there even need for there to be one there at all? Like, it comes down to gameplay. At the end of the day, they're going to put in what they feel they need. So
I think, you know, there's obviously utility. There's a massive gaps of vehicles in terms of base building, in terms of transporting stuff around for planets where you can't land, or you can only land in very specific locations. The military vehicles, I'd like to see them do something very different as opposed to just go traditional sizes. You know, I would still like to see them do something like the Sandcrawler, which you can't move from a planet. I think that would be cool as well. Yep. Whether it's something we get involved in or whether it's something to... Oh, look, Girls 18 Online's just jumped into chat.
See ya, Girls 18 Online. Have a great time.
Bye.
Bye.
But yeah, you know, I think, you know, because there's certain limits to it, and I think, you know, seeing the more vehicles you put in, the more they're going to be used, the more it's going to kind of invalidate people moving around on foot and doing that sort of stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to have a think about it.
All right, let's move on then, because we that is definitely a weeds question. Do you think this is from Naruto? I cannot pronounce that at all. That's really weird. Naruto, but with a G. Is a G sign? That's what I'm saying.
I'll give it Naruto.
Yeah, so Renuto with a G says, do you think CIG will try to finish Deliberated before the release of Pyro? I would hope so. What do you guys think?
Yes, I would hope so.
Badges?
Because it's a transport vehicle.
Makes sense to me.
It's your favourite shipping ship, isn't it, Badges?
Yes, it's a shipping ship.
Yes.
Yep.
And that's all it is. It's not a carrier. Stop. Stop calling it. Where's the camera? Stop calling it a carrier. CIG.
No,
Pack
can't
it in.
make me. It's a light carrier. Anyway,
It's not a light carrier. It's a transport ship. It's a ferry.
Ship.
it's a ship that carries other ships, so it's a carrier. It's carrying things.
Ferry.
Anyway, Joshua Charlotte asks, do you think we'll see anything about the Crucible at this AIE? Oh, that's actually not a bad question. Considering it was on the roadmap, we could see, or I'd say maybe after in the ship talk. You know, the ship Q&A they do after? Maybe there we might see some stuff. What about you guys?
Yeah.
We might see an updated ship model. That might be nice.
Yes, that's
We might.
true. Well,
What
like
would-
concept info would be nice too, if you know what I mean.
What would blow me away is if we had just, even if it was just a shell of a ship, but we could act. You know, remember when they put the Idris in the hangar and you could just see it? Maybe that. Or if we were able to actually walk in to part of it, that would be, yeah, I'd be all googly and yeah, because that was that. You said earlier, one of the things, Badgers, that one of the things we need is more of those non-pew-pew ships, more of those non-military ships. We've got lots of them. For me, those types of ships, the Hull Sea, the Crucible, the Reclaimer, they were the ships that, to me, really made me go all in on a game. Because it wasn't just a straight military game. This was a game that was looking at logistics and repair and everything else. And for me, that went, yeah, that's what I'm after. So... I'd be yeah.
Just a follow-up question. Someone said large Liberator planned. That's the Kraken. 100%. Question: what if they take AI drones from the Apollo and do what with them?
I think that's.
I don't think there's evidence they're gonna take them away. I think it's one of the strengths of the Apollo, is to have these basically.
Recovery
they go out, they form a bubble around a pilot that's ejected, and they come back in and deliver them.
Yep.
Deliver pilot.
I think that comment was going back to that discussion we were having about the medical carrick.
Yeah.
So giving and the idea I said about taking the drones away, and they said, well, what about?
I see what you mean.
So that's totally an idea. The medical module allow somehow so you can swap out one of the repair drones or whatever, and that's not a bad idea at all. It allows you to have you swap one of those out, put a medical one in, and all of a sudden it can deliver them back to the medical module. Yeah, I'd be down for that. More versatility on a ship is always a good thing, not a bad thing in my book.
Maybe that's what replaces that mapping chamber at the top. So that's how it enters and exits the ship, and then deposits the casualty there. And then maybe there's some, part of the lift system.
Yeah.
Then
and if I was redesigning the carrick as a and as a medical ship and had to lose something, would I do you need that mapping room and the scanning room for a medical ship? Not in the same way. You might need a scanner to check the ship and find life sources, but you're not doing it in the same way that you're doing.
But a long range medical ship, you do, because you need to know where you're going so you can find your way back. So that's you got to always remember that the carrick is extreme long range. It is
extreme long range, but it's not. But the way the Explorer version is going to places unknown. If you've got a medical long range ship, it's not going to places unknown. It's going to places that are known. It's going to a location where the damage is.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Yep.
Because if it's only got one module, and you take out the so maybe you got a cargo module, a science module, and a medical module, and an unknown. You're going out there with a variety, so you've just got it there just in case. And that does change it, So again, like I said, Algared, there's a versatility of all the different modules there. So I agree with you if it's a full medical one, 100% agree with you.
I could see, and I was saying, if it's you are doing a full version, but I could also see wanting those things, as you're saying, because even though you know the area, I think of the attack on Vega, the Vandal attack on Vega. We know where Vega is, we know where the locations are, but we don't know what's going to be there when we get there. So those extra scanners and things would be helpful to know.
Another one I just thought of, Algared, is if you're going out there with a massive medical fleet for some kind of medical operation, the carrick could do the command and control stuff with that cartography room. It would be able to manage all the different ships in that fleet and say, you go here, you go there. So that would be, a medical command and control. I know it sounds a bit weird, but if you think about it, they have talked about events that would be medical in nature. So there's like a huge virus breakout on a particular planet, and that person, it would allow that character to organize that those efforts.
Vega would be an example of that as well. Badges, what do you think? Because you look like you leaned forward, ready to jump in and give your view on fleets. And since you are our resident naval guy.
Yes.
There you go. Yes.
All right.
Yeah. No. It's. I think my point is not so much on the fleets. My point is on these variants, and the variant first off has to not invalidate the original version of the ship, and it also has to not be as good as the dedicated ships.
That's it.
So, if you're taking the drones from the Apollo, if we're adding these other, there needs to be a trade-off. It needs to remove not something, because if all you're doing is switching out the mapping room, it can still map.
Yeah.
The map just provides a buff to its mapping ability. CIG stated this, I think when the Odyssey came out, there was questions around it, and they basically said, you can still do all of those things, but dedicated spaces increase that ship's ability in that area. They don't add the ability; they increase it.
Yeah.
So you've got to be a little bit careful that you kind of do this stuff, or when you do this stuff, that it doesn't invalidate the other things. I think that's my kind of key point. I don't want Carrack owners to suddenly go, "Why would you have a Carrack when I could just have a medical version?"
Yep. That's
yeah. I'd want you to have to choose.
I said before.
Do I want the Carrack version or do I want the?
They are highly unlikely to make a variant of the Carrack that is just a full-on variant when they can use the modules. There's just no reason to do so. It'll be a whole new ship in that regard, and so that's
unless they want to do sales, because we see them doing variant because rather than modules because it gets more sales. But I agree with you.
Yeah, highly unlikely.
It would be much better.
They want sales. They'll do a whole new ship. They won't do a variant. Anyway, Hammer VK asks, I'm hoping we get an armored rescue APC that can carry injured and personnel in a med bed that can be a variant of the Nova tank chassis without a turret, or a smaller turret that we can rescue people in combat zones or high hazard zones. That would be awesome. I think that's kind of what SA was talking about with the medical Spartan. And I think that's probably the most likely variant you would see. You've got that APC module at the back. It's just remove the 3 chairs and put a bed there on both sides. And maybe even a combination of both, where you can have chairs on one side and one bed or whatever. And whatever bed that it's coming, that's kind of similar to the bed that I expect to see in the Pisces. So whether that's a bed underneath the tier 3 bed and it's just literally just a bed, maybe that's what it is in the Pisces. They call it a medical Pisces, but maybe it is literally just a bed, but we'll have to wait and see.
I think you're basically, again, why, if it has a medical bed and the ability to do that and still has a turret so it's still able to defend itself, why would it take a tank? And when it can do so much more. All right, it doesn't have the main gun to do that amount of damage, but I've got railguns for that. I've got missile launchers for that.
Yeah.
Why would I then take anything else? And here's something that's pretty horrifying for you. There are 4 levels of triage, T1 through 4. And obviously the higher priority stuff, Tier 1, is the people that are almost kaput. And then it goes down in seriousness to Tier 4 being, I got an ouchie.
Here's a band-aid, go back and fight.
In combat, on a warship, when you are under attack, when you're at action stations, you're defending the ship, those priorities invert. And the medical staff top priority is the people that can get back to work fastest. Right? The people you can get back into their seats doing the role, defending the ship, increases that ship's probability of staying alive.
Okay.
So the people that you walk in and you go, this person is absolutely ruined, they are Tier 4.
Yep.
We'll get to them when we can.
Yeah.
The people that are going,
so you're essentially saying
I've got burns on my hands.
the priority flips. The priority flips.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So why would you, in knowing that in combat, it's slightly different for infantry. It is because the way the infantry works, right?
Yeah.
It's different for Marines. It's different for Army. But having said that, you're still investing a huge amount of money in medical kit, and you can't put all those things together. So ammo storage, energy for the med bed itself, the supplies that needs, the storage for people, the power that's going to need to move that around because that's heavy as sin. The weapon systems, the armor plating, all of that stuff. What you need is something with a big trunk to throw loads of people in and get it out. There's no reason a Spartan couldn't be used for this. Sit in that, hold your guts in until we get you to the aid station.
All right, next question. Lawless911 says, where did the notion of a medical Pisces come from? Lines in the code that talked about 5-6 months ago about a C8R, and then later on that got updated to talk about a medical Pisces. So it's probably R for rescue or something like that. Next question.
And maybe a dose of hopium in there as well, but yeah, certainly what Execute said, lines of code, things that have been said.
Stranix, question. Do you think the CIG may allow the banner merchantman to use a dock defender as a bonus for additional shield power / weapons? Basically, leeching power from the docked vessel to support larger ship. There's no evidence to support that at all in my book. But,
no. It was certainly an idea we bandied as being, this would be cool. But the fact that they've talked about it having a hangar.
Yeah, now the hangar's there.
To me says no. Yeah. Not in a month of Sundays.
Yeah, it changes everything now the hangar's there.
The other thing I think about when I think of that is how quickly the Banu merchantman will drain a defender. Like dry. It's just not going to provide enough power to.
I'd say it as the reverse. The dock defender's leeching from the mothership to power its weapons, but yeah, if it was doing anything like that, but yeah, I don't think if it's a standard hangar now, I don't see it at all.
Okay, next question from Euro the Smoke, who asks, do you think the Carrack will be devalued with smaller ships with med bays?
No.
Well, the Cuddy didn't take away from it, so why would... Maybe the Apollo. Actually, the Apollo might. Because it's got the bigger... But Apollo is probably going to detract from almost every other medical ship, let's be honest, because it's got that, the tier 1 bed.
Why is a smaller ship with a good med bed going to take away from a Carrack?
I think he means, does it take away specifically from its medical capabilities? And I think, sure. So I think the only one that can really do that is one that's got a better bed. So that's the Apollo.
But I don't see it because, again, it's the role. Can you put your Apollo into that role of a deep space explorer? Sure. But does it have the same abilities to do that as a Carrack? No.
I think you're taking it out of context. He's clearly comparing medical to medical. But yes, I do get your point. I just disagree. All right.
I'd argue. Does it devalue an endeavor?
Well, maybe we can get him to update his context on it then. So Uri, if you're out there, man, can you give us? Is that in terms of medical terms, or is it ship to ship? All right. Rashmord asks, Exy, with the problem with the cutter being the one that fits in the Reclaimer, is that the Reclaimer dates back to the Tavaran War 400 plus years. Drakes themselves is only 107 years old. That's a good point, if that is true, but it's a game at the end of the day, and they will modify the law to suit. I don't know. You tell me, Algared. Could the cutter be a late addition to the Reclaimer that's happened in only the last 100 years? So,
of course it can. When did we start buying ships in game?
Yeah.
2932 or something like that?
Yeah.
So yes, it could very easily be a late addition to the game. Could they have had a Tavaran cutter early on? Yes. Could they have had a Xi'an cutter? Could they have had an Aegis cutter or a ship that's doing that? Absolutely.
Johnny McJohnface. I have to laugh at the things I was saying earlier. Question, your best guesses on when the whole scene makes it into the game after server meshing, he asks. I don't know. Badges, I'd have to kind of say that comes with the cargo refactor. Hey, Badges.
I think so. It's working, right? It's in the pipeline. It's doing its thing.
They just haven't,
because we had this conversation about why they wouldn't do the B, and it was, I think the conclusion we kind of came to is because the C's got some stuff on it that they need to work through. If the A and the B are similar and all it is a larger version, it makes more sense to try the C because you get the technical blockers out the way. Then the D, E, and B follow. Follow, in common sense. So
I think it's more of an indicative thing that they haven't really talked much about cargo refactor. We haven't heard diddly shit on ISC almost at all.
We've seen the cargo refactor stuff shown on the loading or moving cargo in a reclaimer. That's it.
Yeah. But we haven't seen anything more detailed. We don't know, like, are we just getting a slightly bigger box and that's it? Are we getting all these random boxes? We haven't had any of that stuff.
Does it lock the cargo grid? Does it?
Yeah.
We don't know any of that stuff.
So
we just know
so much left up in the air there. So that's a very big can of worms. And I kind of put that back to CIG. Come on, give us some updates. That'd be great. And maybe they don't know. Maybe they're hopeful of squeezing into 318, so they don't want to crush our dreams. Maybe it's not going to make it, But I would assume it'll, like, say it comes out in 318, wherever that cargo refactor comes, I think the whole C is the epitome of what they are trying to do there. And that ship's been, 2 or 3 years now, I think that ship's been on the back burner. So it's been there for a while.
There have been different blockers, because I can remember early on, the blocker was the expanding of a ship. The fact that it had that concertina type effect. Then it was the docking issue. Then it was, so there are different things that have been blockers for certain ships as they've gone along. And as more things have come in, they've realised, this is blocking it. But I think when cargo refactor comes in, based on what we've seen, it'll be tier 0, and at least we'll see it in the loading and offloading when things like the reclaimer's doing its thing. But that's as far as I'm pushing it, and I think that's even pushing it maybe a bit too far.
All right, so Shinobi Trip has a statement, which I kind of agree with. With most of the recent pirate skins being made for Aegis, I don't see why people don't expect an Aegis-Drake collaboration, and that is true. There are actually now more pirate skins for Aegis than there are for Drake. So, I don't know. I agree with that. Anyway, all right.
I've often argued that why people see Drake as being pirate when you go and half the pirate ships you encounter are Aegis. So, yeah.
I think Skull and Crossbones, like a decal or something, will eventually be a thing, and you can just put it on any ship you own. So,
yeah.
Looking forward to seeing the 890 Jump Pirate Edition. So, yeah. All right. Shinobi, no, did that already. Vegas asks,
Vegas.
Question, what size shields will the Corsair have? Player in chat in SC argue that for hours over the shield size. The Corsair, last thing we saw was it 1 or 2 medium, I think was the last thing.
According to the Matrix of Lies.
Yeah, so, take that with a grain of salt, Vegas. But yeah, 2 medium. And again, this is the problem with multiple informations is you get people arguing over it. And at the end of the day, even when we have a discussion like this, we just kind of go, well, we'll see what happens. Because otherwise we're just going to go in circle and go, no, you're wrong. No, you're wrong. And that's what we've done in the past. And so we will just go, oh, fuck it. Let's just agree to disagree. Or wait and see.
It'll be in the same vein somewhere as a Connie / the ships in its wheelhouse.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Trader Gator asks, do you guys know if they will have the Carrack Expedition for sale, not the regular Carrack? Yeah, so it's usually sold as an upgrade, isn't it, Algared?
Last time it was sold as an upgrade. So you get the upgrade with the skin for the Carrack, and I think that also gave you the... Did it also give you the Argo... Not the Argo, the C8X upgrade as well?
Yeah, so they had different upgrades. They had one that gave you, turns your Pisces... There was 3 different ones. One that was just for the Pisces, one just for the Carrack, and then one for both. And they were the 3 CCs they sold. And I think it was $25 for one that did both. And and you can guess out the rest off the top of your head. But
and Execute and I went, ooh, that's an expensive paint skin, I'm buying it.
Yeah, that's it, basically. Yeah, so yeah. Cynic asks, question, do you think the Hurston rework will happen on 318 or much later? Or that? How long is a piece of string, mate? How long is a piece of string? That's a if, when, maybe question.
What I would guess there, mate, is looking at the work they did at CitizenCon. If you looked at the outlying buildings, the ones that are spewing smoke in the air, they're still very much grey box.
Yep.
There's no textures on them. They are just blank grey boxes. So I would suggest not 318. I'd maybe 319 if we're lucky. But not with 3. I would be genuinely shocked if they got it in for 318. I think they've got bigger fish to fry, mate.
Yeah. For me, I just kind of go, let's play it safe and say in the next 12 months, maybe.
I think I'd say it depends on whether they had the environment artist being able to work on it.
Only if you behave, Cynic, you get it in the next 12 months. If you're a bad boy, we don't get it. So,
that's right.
It's all on you. It's all on you, Cynic. Yeah.
That's right.
All right.
Lump of coal if you're bad.
Yeah.
Nice upwork if it's good.
Starlight Fox 84 asks, I know you guys enjoy helping people fix fleets and whatnot. What if any advice do you have for a rare ship collectors? Then you're rare ship collectors, you know. And a lot of those rare ships are hard to come by. You know, you do you though, man. You want to get those rare ships, you do that. And Algared and I have rare ships, don't we, mate? So
yeah. I think if you've got the questions, shoot me a line in Discord, because I am the Inforunner who does suffer from extreme Pokemon syndrome.
Yeah, I often have to pull him back from the edge.
You know,
yeah.
And it hasn't worked. The only, you know, CIG have tried to cure me by bringing out the Odyssey and the Steel, and it's only partially been successful. So,
do you actually have a pirate caterpillar, Algared? I'm curious.
Of course I do.
All right, cool. Just asking.
Of course I do.
Curious.
The only ships I'm aware I don't have are the Steel.
You got to stop ragging on the Odyssey, man.
You know,
I've told him that a few times.
I've got an upgrade to the Odyssey.
Yeah.
Admittedly from a Perseus, but I do have an upgrade to the Odyssey in case it's good. But my beef is it just doesn't have enough information to tell me how it fits the role. So I'll sit on the CCU.
All right, Rice asks, since the Spirit is now 50% larger than the Cutlass and Freelancer, with equivalent or smaller components, less firepower, and considerably the flight changes, it is even competitive now. Well, it's not 50% larger, but it is larger. And yeah, it still does compete because of the engines. In fact, I'd probably argue on just the cargo part alone, if you're looking like C1 Cutlass and Freelancer or Freelancer Max, you know, just at the cargo ones, it's probably one of the better ones because most of the time it's going to be going faster, you know. And if you're able to deliver just as much, in fact, it's 2 SC more than the Cuddy. It's probably the better one. I think the only other way you could go is if you go back to the Freelancer Max. But someone will correct me. I have to check the Freelancer Max. But is the Freelancer Max got a higher? I have to assume it does. Got a higher cargo capacity than the C1, and if that's the case, there's your balance there, right? Slow and steady versus, you know, or slow, steady and more versus quick and less. You know, it's a balance mechanic again. So
yeah. I can understand the concern because the concern over the size increase and those limited, you know, the smaller components and stuff is exactly the same feeling that I have over the Andromeda and the Constellation.
Badges,
the size increase meant that you got...
Badges, your chair is very squeaky, just so you're aware.
It is.
I'm going to buy you a can of WD-40 and send it over.
The Constellation got the upgrade in size, and then it's got back the same problem, but it's got those small components still.
So actually, look, Robert Vols just linked 120 SCUs. So that's like, 48 for the, that's more than double. So that kind of does put the Freelancer Max back in the game. You know, like, you know, you are like, what diminishing returns, you know what I mean? Like, so say it's 20% faster, and I'm not saying that's what it is, but say it's 20% faster. How does that, so does that mean over a shorter distance it's better? And the Freelancer Max is better over a longer distance? You got to evaluate it yourself. Again, we always keep coming back to player choice. There is no perfect ship in this game. There is no best. It's the best for the situation. One of the things we sat down and did, just to give an example, remember when we were doing dropships badges, and we literally found every single dropship, there was a scenario where it was the best. And that's what you want. You want the best. So basically, the best becomes which is the one that's the best most of the time. And that's where you come to general things like the Caterpillar, you know, because it's got, you know, it's going to have the best modules, so it gives it the versatility. But is it going to be the best medical ship in that size? No, that'll be the Apollo, you know. So that's what you want. You want outliers, and every ship to have its niche, and it's nothing is perfect. That's exactly what you want. That's a really well-designed game, you know. And you look at anything like a first-person shooter. There are some, you know, when people talk about meta, you can take the meta, and I guarantee you, at least 50% of the time, that is not the meta thing. Mm-hmm. It's just that most of the time, that is the best weapon to pick. So yeah. All right.
If you've seen that video they do of the developer watching people do the gameplay, and it's watching the plastic thing that they put shapes through, and they watch them do the first shape correctly, and then they get every other shape like the kids do when they sort shapes on the thing, and then he put it all through the same hole. Right, this is the same thing. Not every ship is a combat ship.
Yeah.
So the size of shields and weapons and doesn't matter. Because it's not a combat ship.
And even then, you got other things that come into play. Like as soon as you move the place, so you go from one planet to another. There will be things where heat comes into it, the atmosphere comes into it. Like there's just so many outliers that we can't vision. Things like how quickly you can get back to where you came from. Like, can it go through different jump point sizes? There are just so many outliers that you can't see at the moment. Because there's one, and I guarantee these ones we're mentioning, there'll be ones that we can't even see yet. You know, like how well, you know, let's look at manufacturers. Drake can probably repair itself easier than Origin can. Right?
100%. I expect that to be the case.
You know, so like, but does that make Origin better or worse? Because it'll probably take Origin 5 times as long to break down. You know what I mean? So there's just, you can't quantify it. You just can't. There's too many variables to go, yes, you can't do that.
It's that whole question in terms of, is Drake reliable or is it just easy to repair? And people say, oh, it's a reliable ship. I've never seen Drake as being reliable ships. I've seen them as being dirt cheap ships to build, which means, and using really common construction techniques and materials, which means they're really, really easy to repair.
Yep.
So you can get them back into the field a lot quicker. It's a bit like T-34 tanks versus Tiger tanks. Tiger tanks, really good, but lots to maintain. T-34s.
Yeah. And it's the same thing, Algared. You probably find it's the middle, like some, I don't know, I'm going to pick a manufacturer, like something in the middle of the road, like Misk or Crusader or something, or Argo, you know, something in that middle vein is going to be the one that's the perfect sweet spot because it doesn't cost too much to buy, fairly easy to be to find, but it doesn't break down as much as Drake, you know, but doesn't cost too much as what Origin does. So,
whereas Origin is like super good, takes a long time to break down, but when it breaks down, getting those parts is going to be expensive or time consuming to do that repair, and it's you're going to have that balance.
But that ship will have some that manufacturer might have a completely different negative as well.
Absolutely.
That we just left the field, you know. So it's no way we can ascertain any of that until much further
until we get to do it. But River Smoke did come back with a comment about the Carrack, and he was saying he was looking at purely medical because so many people he see buy the Carrack purely for the medical, and if they're buying it purely for the medical gameplay, that's nuts because that's one aspect of the Carrack. It's not the Carrack's main goal. So any medical ships doesn't really devalue the Carrack in terms of the ship, but
I think we'd both argue if you're looking for a medical ship, though, based on value, the Endeavour can't be passed. Again,
why would you go an Endeavour? Why would you go a Carrack for a medical if you've got a chance for an Endeavour like that's?
Yeah, exactly it. All right, Silverhawk71 asks, what is the view here on the need for multiple speeds? I remember COG saying this back in the early Arena Commander days and then getting rid of it, just concerned a buried clunky system is coming back. Master modes is what he's talking about in short. Badges, you're the military person. Tell us about master modes and, you know, what's your thoughts on it?
Master modes have absolutely no equivalency in the military whatsoever.
Bullshit. If they go too slow, they die. No? All right.
That's just speed. There are, with modern warships, there are vaguely comparisons. So let me talk about the Type 23 frigate, for example. The Type 23 frigate has 2 propulsion modes. It has EM drive, and I know this sounds futuristic. This is in existence. It's been in existence for decades, right? The shafts do not interface with the ship at all, other than at the end where they push the ship along, right? The engines don't touch the shaft. What they do is they use magnets to rotate the shafts to off they go, right? The benefit of that is the Type 23 is terrifyingly silent against submarine, right? Because there's no vibration going into the shaft, which then exits the ship, sticks out into the water. If you've got the engine directly interface with that, all that vibration from the engine, no matter how much you muffle it, it will carry through. It also has something called COD lag, combined diesel, electric, and gas, and it has basically 2 marinized 747 jet engines. And what they do is they have a clutch that then clutches into the shaft. It gives it speed at the cost of sound. And Jesus, when this thing's up at 28 knots, everyone can hear you. They shake themselves to pieces. These things matter because you're choosing between, I don't have the speed to respond. What I'm trying to do is prevent myself from being detected in the first place, so response isn't something I need to worry about. Versus, it's easier to evade torpedoes at higher speed. But being at a higher speed makes it more likely that you get shot at in the first place. So this is master modes. Is it going to work in the game? Remains to be seen. Yeah. I think they're going to need something with larger ships, with larger ship shields, that those shields come back at a slightly quicker rate. Anyone that's watched the Connie's shields trying to coalesce, if you use the stock shields, you get quantumed, you're just dead because your shields aren't going to kick in, even with the armor and things not just exploding when they get 0 hit points. I think that's, for me, the key. If they can find some way to make that feel normal, great. That's their challenge. That's their balance issue.
Yep.
Don't know about you, Algared. I was a little distracted there. As a Navy boy, I think Badgers was talking way too much about shafts. But anyway.
No, I was thinking the way he's talking about the magnetic shafts on the Type 23 frigate would mean if you had that on a submarine, that actually helped make the submarines quieter, apart from the baffling of the water coming out from the back. But so I was keeping it above the gutter. You obviously went down to the gutter and into the sewer.
Yeah, that's my job. Former comedian, I just have to go there. Anyway,
this one's for you, Execute. But
yeah.
Shafts.
All right, Captain Kersnick asks question. Captain Kersnick asks, what if they take the AI drones from the Apollo for the Pisces Carrack for the Medivac, and that's not a bad idea. What if the Pisces was a drone carrying? It just basically picks people up with the drones. That's all it does. It literally is like what we're saying with the Spartan. You could do that. Oh, you could do that with the Spartan too. So it comes up behind a hill and you send the drone over and it grabs them and brings them back and then you drive off. Oh, wow. That actually totally changes it for me. What about you, Badges?
Yeah. Again, I've got to default to yes, as long as they keep the balance in. I think what I would love to see those drones do, at CitizenCon, they demoed the Slaver pod, where it was like an anti-gravity trolley, and it just popped up when you switched it on, and they pushed it round, they took it down some steps, blah, blah, blah. What I would love to see is that...
So I was going to say, makes it recovery, not just rescue. So it could be the Pisces recovery. I think rescue is the better word, though, but... Yeah, sorry to interrupt. But
so what I'd love those drones or whatever it is to do is I would love to see them be able to, almost like the front of the mule, they have something that they recover, an air shield comes over the top or some sort of protective bubble. They bring it back, but then that thing has handles on that end. So rather than having to pick the body up or drag it around, the drone literally comes up to you and you go, thank you, click, detach it. You pull the trolley away and now you have this floating trolley with the body on that you literally just push straight up to the med bed, transfer the casualty, take the trolley back. You might even have more trolleys than you have drones. So you can put a new trolley straight back into the drone. The drone goes off and do something. You take the now empty trolley from your med bay back up, ready for another drone to come back. But I'd love to see that kind of method of transferring casualties, so it's not constantly, oh look, this dude's got a broken spine, throw him on the trolley, now throw him on the ground, now put him on the trolley, now bounce him down some steps, now pick him up again, now put him on the bed.
I think that is what they are looking at anyway, because if you recall back to the Apollo's Shepherd drone goes into the ship and that goes straight into the bed. So it actually goes up and puts the patient onto the, does something where patient in the bed and then the drone seems to disappear. So that seems to be what the Shepherd drones were doing anyway. So, but if you've got a recovery vehicle, then having that step where you need to separate them or wheel them into the transport position so you can take them back to the med ship, that would be, that's the middle step, isn't it? So you're talking about the step in between. So yeah. But that whole discussion does go, like, just thinking of recovery vehicles, World War II recovery vehicles. You get a tank, you rip the turret off and all the weapons, and you put a crane on it. And that, you've then got a Tiger, a recovery tank. It's no weapons. It's just no. So if you're doing that with any type of tanks or vehicles in Star Citizen, that you've got to expect that they're going to lose that massive weapons or armory to get that ability to recover or repair or do whatever. So.
All right, Ken Wendelbo asks, will I need a new video card for DirectX 12 once it's completed or ported, he says, sorry.
Only if your game is already throttled by your GPU.
Yeah, and I think, again, if you've got a lower end, like a newer lower end car, you'll just get more benefits, not less. So, yeah.
Like, I think at the moment, the indication I got was all of our game, we're all throttled by our CPU. And Gen 12 is going to free that up, so it goes to our GPU. And so at the moment, regardless of what we've got, I think we'll see an increase or an improvement of speed. But yeah, have to wait and see.
All right. Nightly Fist asks, does the Odyssey make sense as a long-range mobile base for a small group of players?
Yes.
If you're doing industry, potentially. I think it's more industry focused than some other ships that could do a similar role.
Just based on what we know about it, yeah. That cargo / hangar bay connect is a really big value. The fact that it's a long range ship that can refuel itself does mean you could use it that way, but it's still got reservations.
Because essentially, you go to say something like a Kraken, that is a bigger org, though. I wouldn't, you're getting into the neighborhood of 20 people there, But if you're talking like, I don't know, 5 to 10, I think the Odyssey would be a better option. It really depends on the size of your org. I think would need.
But then if I'm looking at an Odyssey with its extra small hangar, or whatever size they call the hangar, I'd probably lean more towards a Polaris with the same size hangar, because at the moment I know more about what the Polaris has got that makes it a good ship. I don't know that much about the Odyssey yet. So if I'm going industry, I'll probably go Odyssey based on what we assume it'll be. If I'm going more military, I'd go the Polaris.
I think we know what the Odyssey's got. The question is what niche is it filling? I don't think there's any questions over systems components.
We know it's got a med bay.
Yeah.
We know it's got the thing. We know it's got the hangar. But what are its systems in terms of how do the systems work for exploration or survey? And that's where we don't really know. We don't know what niche it's going, and we don't know what things make it really good at that aspect.
I guess my point is that's not specific to the Odyssey. We don't know how exploration's going to work. Full stop.
No. Yeah, that's right. And we don't know whether it's going exploration or survey. And so What role it's filling is still nebulous, and that's partly my frustration with that ship. Whereas I look at the Polaris and I can see I've got a better idea of what the ship can do because of how it's been sold and how it's been and how the information we've got and the things that it's got that are working for it. But yeah, 6 of one, half a dozen of which one you go for.
Yeah, I think the Odyssey's going to be able to do pretty much all of it because, again, like we said, they've got the abilities. The question, or the real question is, what's the thing it's going to excel at?
Yeah.
Are we going to go down the route of specific scanners work for specific things? So you get scanners that are optimized for mining, you get scanners. Does that then mean, for example, it looks like, if you look at the picture of the Odyssey, there's one I'm thinking of in particular, it has a scanner under its chin in exactly the same way that the Prospector does.
Yep.
Are they going to lock that to only mining optimized sensors can go in this slot?
Yeah.
Because that would seriously change the role. But I think at the moment, you can, it's got the ability, and one of the things it has over the Carrack for me is because the cargo space and the garage are co-located and you can move one into the other. That's a real strength for me. Because then, if we're going with the rule, if it fits, you'll fit a lot.
And I think that even gives it at the moment, it gives it a leg up over the Polaris as well, because the Polaris, from my understanding, doesn't seem to have that connection between hangar and cargo bay / garage, because the garage is at the front and the hangar's at the back. So yeah, but it's like we've said about every ship. You can use any ship you like for any role, but some ships are going to be really good at a role and some ships are going to be less good at a role, and it's just a matter of what ships and things you want. So anyway, next question, I think.
Yep. Sangrep asks, question, does Badgers have a name in mind for his Perseus, or are you still looking for name suggestions?
So I think the 3 that came out in stream was the Indefatigable, the Righteous Indignation, or the Morbius Sire. I know which one I'm siding towards, but I'm keeping that close to my chest.
So if you let it know, someone's going to try and beat you to it.
Yeah, Infabitious Righteous Brit. That's what I All right. White Rider asks, question, as the system grows, is there any timeline or milestones that will show when the AI NPC assistant server blades can assist in solo players in larger ships? Thanks. I think personally, and I think you guys will probably agree with me, that is something is still much further down the line. I think the main time you're first to see AI stuff at all will be in Squadron 42. And that won't be blades based. That'll be maybe a turret operator or like a wingman and stuff like that. But I think once we have those ones online, you can then quantify how far behind the AI stuff is. But we need to see that in place first, I think. Do you guys want to speak to that at all?
Or I could see them rejigging Arena Commander so that if you went in solo player Wing Commander, your wingman worked better. But yeah, I think there's lots of stuff we have to see first. I know they've talked about the way the AI fight and fly. I know they've talked about wanting nav mesh for them walking around and being able to go outside the planets, but there's a lot more that we've got to see before it becomes good enough in the PU for us to have.
All right, Aki Shaky asks, I got constant ships on my screen and list with $signs. No questions yet from here. Okay, so that's just a random statement. All right, Morningstar asks, do you think that we'll ever get a medium science ship or science gameplay soon?
Yes.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry?
Yes and no. Yes and no, like Badger said.
Oh, yes. Yeah. So yes, but not soon. Yeah, I agree. It'll come with the gameplay. So look on the roadmap out for science popping up, and when science pops up, then you'll know that they're probably putting that in. And you know, we've talked about this quite a bit. We did an episode on creatures, didn't we, Algared? And if they've got a ship that's doing science that's plant based, then pretty logically that they're probably going to do a science that's creatures based or animal based.
Yeah, and I could see them bringing out their concept ships for those things when they've got that gameplay either in the loop or in game, because they've got to the point where they're saying we don't want to bring ships in if we don't have a loop for it, because it just causes people to get annoyed and frustrated at us. So
W. Allen asks, I see the Nautilus as a good drone boat. Do you think that we'll have an option to get more types of drones in the future, or maybe a variant of the Nautilus full drone carrier? I would say definitely more drones. As in a drone boat, I don't think it would be the Nautilus. I think it would be a custom ship. If you were going to do that, they'd take the opportunity to do a different ship.
Mm-hmm.
What do you guys think?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, we know we've got two types of mines coming anyway. You've got the explosive versions, you've got the gun armed sentry mines, effectively armed versions. I would be very, very surprised if they didn't do some sort of EMP armed one, which would be quite good fun, or something like just an early warning mine. So something that doesn't actually do anything at all. You trigger it, passing it, and it basically looks at your vessel passively and then passes all that information to something that's much further away. So in effect, you get a massively enhanced passive scan range or detection range.
Yeah, and I could see that.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, we've seen those types of things discussed in lore with sensor stations. We see that in the scanner missions where you go pick up, shoot up the scanners that are up checking out an area. So yeah.
All right, Hook 205 asks, season's greeting, next large cap ship. I think we kind of talked about that and covered that before, so actually go on to the next one. Captain Starhawk asks, do you think the Polaris will have an unlimited amount of resources to repair ships before you have to resupply? No, I think you'll have to use cargo resources from the cargo bay.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what they've said for every ship that's doing repair.
Yeah. Fat Gus asks, I'm big into RP. How viable do you think offering services to other players' orgs in repair, salvage, ferrying, and the like will be in SC? I think it's going to come down to that rating system, and I think one of the things people keep forgetting is this is a very big universe, and you aren't going to always be able to rely on your org. You are going to have to interact with players and NPCs to get some stuff done. And if you stay inside your safe little bubble of your system, yeah, absolutely, you'll have no problems. But as soon as you go outside that, you're going to have to deal with the people that live in that system, and they are going to have positive and negative repercussions no matter which way you go.
And people who are really, and even in your org, even in your system, if you're a person who's known to be really, really good at doing, repair or salvage or whatever, then you might get called on to do the repair. If I got a choice to use Badgers, who's A1 perfect at doing repair, or Execute, who's kind of okay, I know who I'm going for. Sorry, Execute, you're fired.
That's fine.
So
and look
want to
to
repair
games
your Dirty Origin ship anyway. That's right, fine.
Other massively multiplayer games in this sort of space. So look at EVE Online, for example. There was a player, I forget his name. I'm doing the guy a massive disservice, but he built up a reputation. When you could sell a certain type of super cap, there was basically a hole in the way the game did it that one of you had to give the money first, or you had to give the ships first. So in other words, one side could get what they wanted and then withhold their half of the bargain. So he's become known in that game as a broker. So he takes the money from...
Yep.
Yeah, he's the middle dude. He takes the money from the company plus a cut of whatever it is. He takes the ship from thing and exchanges it. And because he's been completely honest all of the time, he's never double-crossed anyone.
He's got
a reputation now for being honest about it, someone you can trust. Exactly what you're talking about. And I think in this game, we know someone who's looking to do something very similar. They're looking to become a trader. They're looking to become a runner of information. They're looking to do all of this sort of stuff to both players and NPCs. You know, and one of the ways they plan to deal with pirates is get the pirates on side.
Mm.
You know, why would you attack someone that you can get, you know, a constant supply of weapons from? Sure, you can rob him once, but you're never going to get it again. Whereas someone who operates under the shade of a legitimate businessman who's actually able to get you stuff that would be illegal, that's a powerful ally to have. Because if you don't attack him, if you actually pay him what he's asking for, that's going to be a constant demand for you, as constant supply for you.
Right. Yep. It's like people who say, "Oh, I'm wanting to build a fleet for a pirate org, a support fleet for a pirate org." For me, it's like, well, you want to be a legal player then, because you want to be able to bring in any supplies you want to be able to help them. You don't want to be, you know, you want, and then you want to make sure you've got the ships that help do that. But yeah, if you're supporting a pirate org, you don't want everyone in your org to be a criminal. You want people to be law-abiding citizens, or at least grey, so they can go into the areas and pick up those hard-to-get supplies to fix up those origin pirate ships, because, you know, they...
We actually talked about a scenario where you had a good guy that was on the Genesis Starliner that was helping the pirates so they could get onto the ship, and he just took along like he was a part of the ride, but then steps out, gets his cut, and goes and does it again. So he doesn't ever get a crime stat because he just looks like he's one of the passengers, but really he's telling all the pirates where the ship is so they can get it. Anyway, Devok asks, I have an Odyssey, Scorpius, Corsair, and a C1, and I think of upgrading the Scorpius to an Endeavour. Do you think the Endeavour can be good in tandem with the Odyssey? Yes, depending on which way you use it, because you've got industrial ramifications for both ships. You've also got docking capabilities for both ships. You could essentially set up the Endeavour in orbit above where the Odyssey is and use it as like a space station. So, yeah.
Thank you, Mongo Mo. So he badges us spot on with a need for medical ground vehicle and loading stretchers. We have PJs with side-by-side that hold one on the front and two on the back. And we load them in the plane for extract. So there you go.
Mongo Mo, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe PJs in this instance refer to parajumpers, which are the guys that go in on Black Hawks and go and rescue, or on aircraft, and go and rescue people. Often down pilots, but it can be anyone. It can be just injured infantrymen. But yeah, they are awesome at what they do. Very similar to Osiris.
So I'll reiterate the question from before. Do you think the Endeavour is good in tandem with the Odyssey?
Yes. I think its positioning as an industry ship means that that may mean that it's able to feed the Odyssey with certain things that it needs in order to be able to do its business, which would be perfect. So yeah, I think there's that. I think the likelihood that you'll have other industry ships on an Odyssey, again, being able to support the Endeavour with that sort of stuff. Yeah, I don't see why they wouldn't pair up. I can't see a reason not to do it.
Yeah.
The only reservation I'd have for that would be an Odyssey Hope with an Odyssey. Well, sorry, an Endeavour Hope with an Odyssey. But other than that, Endeavour with a scanner doing its big telescope. It goes out and finds pockets of gas, or it finds a planet with got a high concentration of some mineral. You send the Odyssey off at that point. A bit like we talked about doing with the Carrack. You got the Odyssey, it goes exploring, it finds a part. You bring it back to the Endeavour, use a super collider, you upgrade the parts and fine-tune them. So, yeah, I can't see a reason why. And as we often say, the Endeavour is such a cheap ship at the moment in terms of it's still at its original $350 price tag.
Yeah.
It is a ship worth locking in, even if you think possibly maybe I will want one down the track.
Yeah.
So.
All right, good question here by Weepy Sleeper. Are there going to have any variations to the Titan suits, like a medical suit or an industrial suit? I'll let you answer that one, Algared, because I know the answer.
Yes.
Yep. So we actually found that out when we were going back and looking at the old Caterpillar videos. Before they actually called them Titan suits, they specifically called them exosuits, and they mentioned exo repair, exo medical, exo combat, and a whole bunch of stuff like that. So yeah, 100%. Kiblums asks, when the ship damage is fleshed out, do you think they'll be able to target component locations on ships to help disable them?
Yes.
We actually had that already in game at one point where you could cycle between engines and different components. You used to be able to target different turrets on the Hammerhead at one point as well. I still think you can do it, but I haven't tested it in a while, so it may have changed. So yeah. Wait7 asks, I guess I left out the word chain in my... Yes, you did, going right from the MSR to the... So I guess I had left out the word in my question, going right from the MSR to the... Oh, he's building a CCU. Yes, yes, you will definitely find some Warbond CCUs you can put in there. Yep, no problem. Lawless911 asks, I ended up buying both the hangar and hospital module for the Endeavour because the Endeavour Hope didn't seem to be on sale. When is the last time you saw it for sale? So it's the Endeavour's only ever been for sale in the last few years at IAE, which is the upcoming sale towards the end of November. So yeah,
I think that's the time I see it, and then I think you usually see the variants as well. But yeah.
Yeah, we generally don't recommend the variants or modules because, again, just buy the base one and you can earn the modules for pretty cheap in game. That may change, and if it does, we'll change our stance on it. But you know, the most expensive one's $150, but most of them, you know, are much cheaper than that, and it's just like a fighter. They're pretty easy to attain in game. So just, you know, maybe a little bit of rep grind and a few quests and you'll be able to get it. And if you've got a much bigger ship, even the Endeavour itself, once you've got one module in that, you should definitely be able to use that ship to earn even more modules. So they're just not worth, if anything, they'll be gated behind a rep wall. I think that's probably the safest call. Hey, Algared?
Yeah, I think so. We often say don't worry about the modules because when you look at the price of the modules at the moment, even the most expensive module is still less than your standard fighter. So we look at the prices in game of those standard fighters and we say we would expect the modules to be priced accordingly. Even if those prices in game tripled in price, they're still going to be significantly easier to earn in game than say the base ship itself or a larger ship. So that's why we tend to say, you know, if you're looking at saving money, don't do it.
Badges, Shempasta asks, when will they sell the Pioneer and would you recommend getting it?
Yes. If the Pioneer is going to be in sale, it's going to be in IAE. You know, that's always the time these ships go on sale. Remember, the Fleet Week one in June is just the military versions, and the Pioneer certainly isn't that.
The only drawback to it at the moment is because it's under $800, it doesn't come with LTI, and they only ever sell it at that sale. So you have to buy it for $800 with whatever insurance they give you. And I think at the moment it's 120 months insurance. So that's the only downside to it. Also, you obviously got to play the F5 war as well. So
yeah, give it a go. It's certainly going to be. It's going to have a lot of use. There's going to be a lot of people wanting your help if you've got Pioneer.
Kind of falls into that same thing. If construction's your thing, we generally recommend the largest ship available in that size category because it's going to have the better value. But again, you don't necessarily need the construction ship. If you've got an Orion, you can technically earn sideways into a Pioneer. It's entirely up to you. I think we'd all probably agree though that that ship's got a certain rarity to it. Like where it sits is really weird because it's below $1,000 and above 750, and because of that, you can't upgrade to it. It's the only ship that you can't upgrade to under $1,000. Yet also, it doesn't have LTI, so it's in this really shit spot when it comes to you can't CC to it, so you can't get LTI, and because it's below you know, it's just in the shittiest spot. They just need to give LTI to everyone that buys it, or make it so you can CC to it to remove that problem. I've
always thought LTI should be on any ship we buy with credits or cash from the store. Always. And I've died on that hill many times for no value. But yeah.
Well, because Johnski asks, should I sell my Pioneer or keep in hangar? Like, sell it to Shem.
Yeah, there you
Job
go.
done.
Sell it, Shem.
Yep.
Job done.
Fixed it.
Yeah.
But he also says, can you buy back ships that are cost over $1,000? And yes.
Yeah, you can.
Mhm.
All right, John Ski asks, question.
I'll clarify that statement. Yes, you can, unless the ship was one that was in a pack that was sold with physical goods or under some other thing. So there are some things you can't buy back, even if they're under $1,000. But generally, if you've melted a ship that's $1,000, yes, you can buy it back.
All right, Jedi Drifter asks, when will we see a larger Kruger ship, and do you think they should? Well, I'm going to tell Algared's going to say yes right now for the last part, but when, Algared? When do you think we'll see one?
Not soon enough.
Yeah. That's like how long is a piece of string question.
Yep. Yep.
That's a pretty good answer.
They should have. The area should have been one.
Yeah.
So
you've set him off now. Look what you've done. That's fine. But yeah. We'll move on because that one we've talked about quite a bit. Go
watch Captain's Table or one of our previous shows where we've talked about it because yeah.
Voodoo Child asked, question, do you think ISC is still exclusively funded by subs? Absolutely. Probably they make more money than they do spend on the show, would be my personal opinion.
I think so.
Yeah. Lee Sharkbait asks, what would you say to someone who has a 600i Explorer and an executive, but wants one of them to be touring, since we aren't sure if the executive will stay on the exploration variant? I think you'll find that that's a skin and you can use it on either. That would be my... Wouldn't you, Algared, that the executive is just a skin and you can use it on the touring or the... And it really doesn't matter, because if it is the Explorer, you can just buy the touring module in game and swap it, or vice versa.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter.
I know that if you've got a pack that's got both the 600Is and you only get one 600i because it's a module. But if you've got the executive, you've actually got both.
Yeah.
So the question, I think, is the Explorer going to stay? Is the executive going to stay an Explorer? John Crew indicated we don't know what way we're going to make the executive go. But if it stays Explorer, you make the other one a touring. If it goes touring, you make the other one the Explorer. So, or you just get the module and just slip it in and out. So,
Juco asks, large Liberator planned. I answered this before, but that's the Kraken. So it's not planned; it's already out. They did talk about a medium carrier potentially though as well. So we'll wait and see on that one. Luna Maria asks, what ship hangar can fit in? And what ship hangar can fit in an Idris? I need that.
No, can fit an Idris.
Oh, none.
Not in an Idris.
None. There is none. It's got to land on like a pad. The really big capital ships land on capital size pads. Hook. 1 ground, 1 med bicycles, 1 Drake cutter. Do you agree? Questions for 3. I think he means the ships that are coming at IAE. Yeah, most likely. But then they obviously usually get like a small, medium, and large. And now it looks like we're also getting a small, medium, large, and a vehicle. But we just don't have any news on the medium and large at the moment. It just seems to be Argo, MCV, and down. And they say the MCV is a starter ship. You got to imagine if the Cuddy's a snub, that's quite a small ship. And
So, more questions and answers at the moment on that front.
Fat Gus asks, is it fair to compare the Merchantman with the Kraken? If so, how would they compare as a mobile base ship facility? I'm not too fond of the marketplace feature. Yeah, so if you actually compare them, you clearly can compare them because of the privateer. And so if you're not interested in the marketplace feature, you would just buy the normal Kraken. Because it doesn't have a market in the privateer, and therefore there is no market feature in the Banner Merchant. Well, you wouldn't want the Banner Merchant because it has that feature. So for me, you can work around that. But they are comparable. But at the end of the day, the Kraken is kind of like a mall, and especially in the privateer, it's like a mall, and that kind of sits up above the planet, and you go to it. where the banner merchantman can come down to you and deliver that more personal shopping bazaar that's a little bit more personal.
So as a mobile base for an org or anyone, the Kraken is in space, and the BMM really comes into its own as a mobile base once it's on ground.
Yeah, and they both can go down to planet. It also becomes a cost thing. At the end of the day, you'd prefer to take a banner merchant down because it'll cost less. But again, the banner merchant may do the same thing, Algared, mightn't it? It might just dock with a ship and send a whole A down because it works out so much cheaper.
You could use the banner merchantman of the mobile base in space, but because it's got less place to land, or it loses that. Whereas once you've got it landed on planet, ships can land around it and go to it. So it's
right. NATO Brits asks, do you think we'll get a 890 jump variant? Me and Algared did an episode on this. We actually think the banner merchantman is a variant of the 890 jump, because there was an old concept image that showed 3 shops in the 890 jump, and it was a module. Yep. And now, ironically, we've got 3 shops in the banner merchantman, and they're roughly the same size.
But I've always thought, and unlike the idea of having an 890 jump medical ship, private hospital.
Yep, I think that would work as well.
But I wait with bated breath.
Well, as I've always said,
and I could go purple. Yeah,
more gameplay for Origin is not a bad thing. They definitely need more. All right, Beeves Channel asks, like so many ships that have been in concept for a long time, do you think the Perseus will grow, and how do you think or would want it to look if we did get a bigger one or more? Now, I'm going to answer that with no, because it's only the older ships that have grown, because back then they didn't know the metrics. Yep. And so the Crucible and the Endeavour are the last 2 that don't fit to those metrics. And so other than those 2, I would have to say I don't think it's going to grow. Algared, you'd kind of agree. So I'm going to chuck it to Badges. 100%. Badges, can you, as a, it's your kind of ship, what do you think it'll grow? Or do you want it to grow? That's another question.
If it needs to grow, that's fine. I don't think it does, though. If it needs to grow out of necessity, that's great. But the ships have grown out of necessity, not out of functionality. So I think if it grows, it's because they need room for components and all that sort of stuff. Basically, as X said, that the older ships are growing. You can see it in the constellation. They're going to need to do some various bits. There's a lot of thin walls with components supposedly in them. But yeah, I don't think you're going to get more guns on it. One of the other things I keep saying, and like, please just stop taking what makes a ship unique and then trying to get rid of it. So all the people that keep going, oh, well, maybe we'll change the cannons out on a Perseus. It's like, they're bespoke. So you're not going to change them out and keep wishing it's like, no, these things are what make it unique, right?
We get that a lot, don't we? We get people that want their ship that they particularly love to do everything. It doesn't work that way. You've got to have that balance all the way around.
You don't want the things that make a ship unique just given to every other ship. A bit like we were talking earlier with the medical stuff. And you don't want them to become nerfed or just be able to lose those unique things. You want the ships to have that uniqueness, and that uniqueness can also add to the strength or weaknesses of a ship. So and we know that every ship has a weakness at some point. We know every ship has a strength, and it's getting that balance that makes the game. So
all right, Hook 205 asks, question, next cap 2 years or longer. So when he's asking, when do you think we'll get the next capital ship? This year
after Squadron 42.
I think there's really they need to prioritize a bit more of the capital ships. It feels like we're getting this. I don't know, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but they've finished a lot of fighters. But I think it's going to get to the point where they're going to have to do 4 or 5 capital ships at once. They're going to have to get a lot of hands on deck. Maybe after Squadron 42 comes out, to knock some of those bigger ones out, because a lot of people, especially when people don't understand how these things work, they go, oh, if they're only doing 1 capital ship a year, it's going to take them 15 years to do it all. No, they can put multiple people at it and do multiple ship sprints at once. It's just at the moment, they're mainly working on Squadron 42, so it's a lot more laid out in a line where you can compress it and have a multi-lane highway instead of a single-lane road. That's probably the best way to look at that analogy. So, yeah. All right, then. I'm going to cut the questions off there, because that was where I saw the cutoff. We've actually gone half an hour over time. I've actually got to go out to an appointment, so I have to get going. But thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for all the super chats, the bits, the bobs, all that type of stuff. Like this video if you like this video. If you want to go extra mile on Patreon, avenge me rather, and you know, you can follow us on Patreon. Thank you for the primes on Twitch as well. Man, there's so many things now. It's crazy. But yeah, we will have a me and Algared alone. We're talking this morning. We've got 3 shows to record this weekend. A Fix My Fleet, one with a special guest, one with badges. So we're quite a few. So the other one is going to be a versus one, but I won't tell you what ship yet. So like the Perseus versus the Polaris, but we're going to do another versus one. So you got a couple of...
We've kind of thought about it, tossed it around, but there's a couple of options.
I know. No, there's no options. I know what it is. I'm just not telling anyone. I'm being an asshole. Yeah, I'm being an asshole. Yeah, that's me.
But we had talked about several options that we were wanting to do, so...
Okay. Well, hey, we can always do more too, like down the road. So yeah, 100%. So
we intend to do more, but yeah.
Yeah, so yeah. All right, so I'm going to send people on Twitch over to my friend Zero State.
And don't forget, leave a comment. We do answer and read every single comment. We don't always answer, we don't always respond, but we do actually read every single comment. So please leave those. Just remember to be respectful. And yeah.
Okay, it didn't recognize him. Because apparently I can't spell his name. I'm that bad. All right, copy that. Alrighty, /raid. There we go. Raid's been recreated. All right, thank you for joining us, people on Twitch. Great having you. See you next week. I hope you enjoy the show on the weekend. And again, thanks for everything.
Au revoir.
Still waiting. All right, there we go. Enjoy. And Twitch is gone. All right, thank you very much. Guys on YouTube, thanks for joining us. And again, have a good weekend, and we'll catch you next time. Oh, wait. He's been Algared. He's been Badges. I've been Execute.
Execute.
Catch you in the next one.